Andrea, welcome to Our Gang. Welcome, everyone, by the way. This is the first class that we are recording in like a few months. I'm super stoked to be starting to record classes again, and I don't know anyone else that is better suited to start this new season of classes than Andreea Scubli, a hair artist. Andrea, how are you doing today?
Thank you very, very, very much for having me. I'm good. I'm excited and a bit freaked out, but I'll try not to stutter.
Yeah. I think you're gonna do fine. Like you and I, we had a few discussions in the past, and like you seem to have such I kind of want to use the word bubbly, like a bit of a bubbly personality that I'm not really too afraid of how things are going to go there. Anyway, so how many people do we have on Discord? We have quite a lot of you have joined today. So I was kind of afraid this is the first class we haven't that we have recorded in a few months that there would be literally no one showing up. But I'm glad to see that pretty much all the regular faces are all here. So it's good to get to see you all too here. You've all had a chance to speak with Andrea a little bit, but still, I perhaps want to give you all a chance to wish welcome to Andrea officially on the stream. So why don't you all mix and say hi to each other there?
Hello.
Hey, Andrea.
Hey.
Hello, nice to meet you, Andrea.
Nice to meet you too.
Awesome. So the plan for today is that we have pretty much three different components to this particular class, if you will. First of all, so Andrea and myself will have a bit of a 60-minute discussion on what it is to do hair as a specialization, what it is to be specialized in that, whether this is something that Andrea would like to do for the long term, what she thinks about it, does she like it, would she want to do something else, does she have any advice for any of you who are maybe considering this as well. We'll have a conversation there about 60 minutes or so. We'll take a 10-minute break after that. Then, once we come back from the break, Andrea will give us a very detailed breakdown of all of the steps involved in creating a haircut from scratch, essentially from the reference gathering stage all of the way to the final integration. And we will spend as much time as we need to really cover each of the individual steps there in great detail so that you all have all of the very complete information as to how to create haircuts for yourself there. After that, we'll take another short break, and we will come back with the audience Q&A so that you can all bombard Andrea with all your questions related to hair creation there and what it is to be a hair artist in the industry there. Other things to go through before we really get started here. So on ourgang.studio, there is now in your account page, there is a handout section that you may all have seen if you've accessed the website in the last few months or so. And so all of the handouts now are downloadable directly from that particular section. You just have to go to your account page. There's a little tab on the left that says handouts, and you can download all of the handouts for all of the classes from one centralized location. We have added there a particular document that Andrea was kind enough to write for us that really covers all of the major steps as well of the hair creation. All right, Andrea, let's get started.
Thank you very much. This is so cool. Thank you. Just to clarify, the document in the handout is for the cap right now. So it covers the steps of the cap.
Yeah. So your goal is to update the document later on, right? You want to add a few things to it? Okay. Cool. All right. That's great. Yeah. You're so motivated by this. It's like, Andrea, do you want to go for an interview? You're like, yes. And then you're like, oh, let's make a haircut. Let's do all these. I'm like, okay. All right. Okay. I just wanted to talk to you, but here you are. You're like, no, I want to speak to people. I want to teach as well. I want to contribute to this whole project here. So it's like, all right, awesome. Cool. Well, it's good to have you. So essentially, you've been doing hair for a few years now, right? Can you start by going through a little bit of your history of how you came to do hair, how long you've been doing hair specifically, and let's kick off the discussion with that.
So before hair, I used to be more of a generalist. I think my first paid job, which was amazing, was in 2008, and I've been doing all sorts of random things since then. And then about 3 years ago, it was just one of the random jobs. Hey, do you want to do in-game hair? I don't know how to do it, but sure, I'm happy to learn because I just like learning new things and exploring new stuff. And then I enjoyed it and I liked it and I just carried on. And this was the only time that I ever specialized on something. Before that, it was always a different task every time.
So,
that's how I got the hair.
It's been a few years so far, right? That you've been doing hair pretty much exclusively?
Yeah, I think it's been about 3 years now.
3 years? Okay. Are you dying inside a little bit because you've been doing so much hair, or are you still in love with the actual subject there?
I do like it.
Yeah.
It might sound weird because it can be repetitive, but I don't know. For me, I used to love unwrapping. So I guess the tediousness of the hair is something that I enjoy, as weird as it might sound. And also, I feel that it's covering different areas. Like, I feel like I'm doing a bit of modeling because it is the cards that I'm working with. It's not an actual groom. So I feel a bit of modeling is going there. And then moving the cards on the UV to get the textures that I want and to try different things. That covers a bit the part of the unwrapping.
Yeah.
I suppose. And then there's the texturing and then taking the asset into Unreal and checking how it looks. And that covers a bit of look dev. So I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, there's like so much in what you said there that I actually kind of want to talk about there. Like, you said the fact that doing hair is a bit tedious there, which is my personal experience doing hair. It's like, it's very tedious. Like, my personal experience is that a haircut takes like a few days. Actually, a haircut takes a few weeks to do from beginning to like end there. I don't know if I assume that with time you're quite a bit faster than that, but in my experience, it's a very tedious process to create a haircut from scratch, and you have to not mind that kind of repetitiveness within your task there. So I assume it takes a very kind of special personality to be a hair specialist, or to not mind the kind of repetitiveness that you get within the job itself.
Yeah, I think you need to have a lot of patience, and it depends on what people want to do this long term. I feel it's for people that actually really like it, because it's nice to learn and to do it for a couple of months, 3 months, maybe 4-6 months, but after that it's becoming okay. I need to move on. I need to do something else. And I've had moments when I thought, okay, I need to do something else right now, or I'm losing interest.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
Breaks in between of doing something else, and I always like to set little challenges for myself. Like, if I already know how to do something, but I'm not going to repeat the same step, I will try something else, if that makes sense. So I'm not doing the same thing every time. I'm trying to set little challenges for myself, and that's also pushing me because I discover new ways, something that looks better. Sometimes it looks awful and it's like, no, never do this again. But it opens possibilities for me, and I like that.
So even though like it's a very kind of specialized subject matter there, you still find ways to experiment, to try out new things, to like essentially make it so that you're not always doing the exact same thing every day, right? Like, you still find ways to like experiment and try out stuff, right?
Yeah. And also there's research you can do, because at first, at least I was thinking, okay, it's hair, what can be there about it? But you start reading about it, and then you go from one article to another, and it just keeps on going. It's like, oh, there's more to it than just some strands of hair coming out of the head. And I like that. I like the research part, and then figuring out how to put everything that I've read or I saw, or a realistic photo, putting it into the limitations of a game, and just figuring out how to translate one into the other.
Is it like one of those things where, like, when you do hair, like, you feel as if you're kind of afraid, like, in the beginning, before you choose that as a specialization, that it's going to be like a very narrow specialization and you're going to get bored of it? And now, once you actually delve 2 feet in there and you get very deep, you suddenly realize that there's this kind of whole world of things waiting for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I hear that a lot about people who specialize in things, actually. It's like, yeah, like you're kind of afraid of choosing a specialization because you're afraid that, yeah, it's going to get like super boring, that you're going to just figure out everything that there is to be figured out there very, very quickly. And then you jump in there and you realize, wait, there's a whole universe of things, either to learn, to master, to try out, in that very narrow band of subject matter that you have chosen. That's what it sounds like from hearing you speak right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
I didn't intend to specialize on hair. That was not my intention. But then as I went into it, I saw there's more. It's like, oh, I'm actually enjoying this.
So it was not your intention, and yet you've been doing it for 3 years, and you're still going strong there. So I guess it's not as bad as people like me make it out to be then.
It really depends on what you like and if you like this kind of stuff. Because some people like it and some don't. Some people like modeling. Some people like animation, animating things. So it's different things, isn't it? It's just like any specialization.
Yeah. You know, like for me, that kind of reminds me of things like retopology, and like you've mentioned UVs before that. It's like there's like these topics, retopology, UVs. They're very, how can I say? Things are very black and white there. It's like either people love to do these things. They're like, oh, I love retopology. I get in the flow. I put my headphones on, and then they can do that for like hours, and they absolutely love it. You know, there's like people like that who just absolutely love it. And then you get the complete opposite. There's people who are like, I so fucking hate retopology. And, you know, like it's such one of these like black and white things. But I guess, what is it about, you know, like some people would describe hair creation as something that's very tedious. And yet for you, it's something that you don't actually mind. And would you even say that you enjoy it? Like, take us in one of those moments when you are essentially spending hours upon hours just creating an actual haircut, placing every polygon on a hair. Like, how does it feel to be in that particular moment there?
I usually have music on. I don't watch anything while I'm working because it's distracting me. So having my headphones on and having music, and sometimes if it's something really repetitive, I could listen to a tutorial and whatever. And I kind of feel like I'm in my own bubble and nothing distracts me if I have my whole headphones on or I have something that I'm listening to, like just like you were saying. And I just like trying new things and seeing how it works. I like it when it's on my terms and it's not, for example, someone gives me a very tight deadline and I have to do it the same thing repeatedly every week, the exact same thing, the exact same steps. That I don't like. And I think that's what other people hate about it as well. But when you have a bit of freedom and you can try things out, and if I have a certain amount of time and I get to decide the amount of time that I spend on creating the textures, on creating the cap, and not someone limiting me, is like, you have to give it to me by 10 o'clock tomorrow, then it's a bit different. So I like having this freedom. And I think that's why I'm enjoying it. If I get to plan it myself and do whatever I want with it and get a nice result. Because if I'm doing it for someone else, the purpose is that someone else to like it, not me. So I'm doing it for the client, for the other person, for the whoever. But it's still like, okay, how could I make it nice so that this other person like it? And then I'm just organizing myself and just deciding what to spend more time on and what to do and how to do it. And it's just, as long as I get the result that I want.
Yeah. There's something about, for me personally, you know, like right now I do a lot of stuff. So I've coded my own website. I had to learn how to do that. I realized that I don't mind doing coding, but at the same time, I don't really like it either. You know, like the thing about coding that I find is that it is very mentally taxing. You have to keep thinking about things. Like when you're coding a website, you can't actually, or I mean, perhaps people can when they've been doing this for like a long time. That's very possible there. But what I've realized that when I'm picking up things to do that are very mentally taxing, even when I'm doing 3D, you know, like there are things that are very mentally taxing. If I'm doing something that I've never really done before at all, then it often gets to that point where it's very mentally taxing because I have to think through how will I create something. And that takes a lot of brain process to do that. And it's very tiring mentally. And truth be told, like I kind of think, you know, like, so I've been doing 3D for like a long time. And I think of the moments when I am the happiest doing 3D. And sometimes it is when I'm doing one of these things that would on the surface seem to be very tedious, very repetitive, because it's less mentally taxing. You have to spend less time like every moment thinking, okay, what is the next step? Is this okay? Where am I going? And when you actually know where you're going, and I feel as if you get these moments a lot more when you are specialized in something, because you are essentially not always trying something new entirely. You're kind of usually more within a sandbox that you understand there. I do feel that it does lead to a certain happiness, actually. You know, because you get in that state of flow as we're speaking. You get to listen to like a nice podcast that you like, something like that. And yeah, like I find, you know, like the happiest moments sometimes I had doing 3D were really moments where I was doing retopology and I was doing UVs and I was doing something I had done many times before. You know, like it's weird to say, right? But always kind of trying to do something that we haven't done before, as would a generalist probably do more than someone who's specialized in a particular field. I don't find that necessarily leads to happiness, you know? Like, there's happiness in being a specialist in something, I feel like.
It depends from person to person, doesn't it? Because everyone likes different
For
things.
sure, yeah. Yeah. But, you know, like, yeah, go for it.
Oh, sorry. Go for it. Just to say that lots of people are specialized these days. Generalists are the dying breed, I feel. I don't know if I might be wrong.
Well, so let's go through your history a little bit there. So you've been doing hair specifically for about 3 years, right? In there, run us through those 3 years where you've worked and the kind of clients you've worked for, the kind of projects you've worked for, all without getting yourself into trouble, of course. We don't want you to reveal things that you're not supposed to, but like run us through a little bit the kind of projects you've made, maybe like even talk a little bit about the amount of haircuts you've done so far.
It's been quite a few projects. I don't really know how many, because some of them had more, some of them had less. It's just different length for different projects. And I don't know, thinking about it now, I think I see an evolution for the try count at least, and the budget and the quality of the hair over these past 3 years. There's definitely a difference. Things evolved and things got better, and there more attention came on hair. The amount of hairs, I honestly don't know. I think it's around 150 or so.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, that's insane. 150. I've been sculpting faces for 12, 15 years. I don't think I've done 150 faces. You know?
Sure you have. With practice and sketches and everything.
I'm sure I've looked at least 150 faces, but I've definitely not modeled that many faces. That's crazy. 150 haircuts over 3 years?
I think roughly. I don't know if it's more or if it's less, but I think it's around there.
Yeah. So that's how much on average does a haircut take to do?
It really depends on the project and on the specifications of the project. It can be 6 days, it can be 10 days, it can be 20 days if it's like if you got fur on a creature, or it really depends on the project. It can be more or less. Because now I feel there's more projects that have higher try count budgets and higher requirements, and quality is becoming a focus rather than just getting it fast and getting some hair on a character so that they're not bald.
So
and with that, it takes a bit more.
Has the amount of time that it takes to do a haircut became longer and longer as the years and as the console generations shift, or?
I think it can become a bit longer because of the demands of the project. There's this project that you get haircuts that are 8,000 triangles, for example, for mobile games and such. But then there's others that can go to 50K, over 50K triangles. And that's obviously a bit more difficult than 8K because you've got a lot more to work with, and that means close-ups. So you need to have nice hairlines and everything. So you need to pay attention to those.
Right. Okay. 50K, yeah. And is that high or is that low in terms of modern day haircuts, in terms of polygon count?
I think about average still, because there's projects ongoing, is about 20, 30K. But there is the odd odd project that is going higher than that. If there's even on the 20K to 30K, if there's complex hairstyles, like you get lots of braids and dreadlocks and you've got something weird going on the head, and then they can go up to 40K or even a bit higher if there's a lot going on. If you got lots of braids, for example, and you've got dreadlocks, there's no way you can put all of that in 20K and have it look good for a close-up. No way. If someone does it, I want to see it.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm thinking. I'm not sure. I may have spoken about this on Outgang in the past. I'm not sure I can necessarily reveal the exact poly count of Aloy's haircut there, but I know that it's definitely more than 50K. It's a lot more than that. Yeah. Like the polygon count sometimes. Like 50K. Like for some of you watching this may be like, isn't that old budget for like a character there? It's like, no. It's like nowadays characters budget counts like have completely exploded. Like it's not,
they have. You would think that a beard, for example. Sorry for interrupting. I'm just going to say
go for it.
A beard or something that is like a mustache, so that is small. You think, oh wow, what do you need? 500 polygons, triangles on it or something. But they get crazy amounts. Like you get the beard that is the budget of a full hair.
Yeah, it's like you get beards and haircuts now that are the full budget of a character like a few years ago. Like on the console, on previous console generation. It's like PS3, I think in PS3 we had characters who had on average like, I'm thinking of Deus Ex characters here. I think we had like, I don't know, maybe on average like 12,000 polygons for like a character maybe. I may be getting that wrong, but it was somewhere in that ballpark, like more than 15,000 were kind of asking for trouble there. PS4 for me, that's really when it completely exploded. It's like polygon count for characters completely exploded. Like I remember when PS4 came out, I think the Guerrilla team at some point they had posted something online, and like they were talking about the budget for a character that was about like inside Killzone was something like 50,000 triangles. That was like at the start of the PS4 era for a full character, and I don't think that even included hair.
Yeah.
It's like nowadays, like as consoles generations move on, like it's kind of normal for a character when you really consider it in its globality to be like a few 100,000 triangles, which is for me like why that question of like polygon count, like at some point it stops to matter, it's
it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And then there's also LODs, so if something is too heavy you can just LOD it out. No one likes to do those, but it's like you can always reduce something polygon count. Like if you make something that's too heavy, like people are going to watch this and be like, Laura told me I can throw 2 million polygons on a haircut. Like,
maybe don't do that.
There is a limit, guys. All right, we're not saying that you can just waste completely polygons like that, but at the same time, like we have moved on from that moment where you kind of have to be very careful about the amount of polygons you put on stuff. Like there's a lot more freedom there than people realize, I think. Yeah, so like a haircut, 50,000, you were saying.
I've made this one. At first I was thinking, okay, it's going to be 50,000. That's decent for now, for what we get now. But then I thought, this is kind of annoying. I'll go to 70. So I went to 70.
For the haircut that you've made for this particular interview there, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. What's the final poly count on that?
The cards alone are 69, 818, and the cap is only a few hundred. The cap is much lower.
Right. Okay. So that's about 70,000, 80,000 triangles there. And we are talking about triangles or polygons in this case, because I talk about them. Yeah, okay. Triangles, yeah. That's usually the unit of measure. It gets confusing there. It's like, are we talking about polygons? Because polygons are often two triangles, but still.
triangle. Every now and then there's a project that counts the budget in vertices, which is even more confusing.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes.
Oh my god.
But that's rare.
Is there like a formula you can use to transfer from triangles to vertices?
Well, if you have a card that has 2 quads, right? That's a certain amount of vertices. But then if you have lots of short cards, that will be more vertices than fewer longer cards. Because a vertex is between the polys, right? So then it counts it multiple times if it's divided into different meshes.
Right. Yeah.
Short hairs will end up can end up having more vertices than a long hair because of the amount of cards.
Yeah,
that's
that
why
makes sense.
It's a bit confusing when they count it in vertices.
Yeah. But like, if someone told you, okay, you have a budget of 80,000 vertices, do you like in your mind kind of roughly translate that to triangles, or do you like kind of intuitively know what that means in terms of density of polygons that you can afford?
I think it's roughly close to triangles. Roughly, I've only had it on a few projects, so I might be talking nonsense. I'm sorry about that. But what I do, I might open an older scene and look at how it translates from one to the other, or just make a quick test, put a few cards on a head, just to see what it's like, something similar to the haircut that's going to happen, and then just compare. And that gives me an idea of, okay, so I know what the difference is, and I'll take it from here. So I know what how many cards I can have and how to work with this.
Yeah.
It's probably a quick sketch at the start, because that's what I do when I have the triangle budget as well. If I place some cards, let's say I have a hair that is symmetrical, right? So then I if I place the cards on back side of the head, and then I place some here and then some at the front, and then having these areas that have a certain amount of triangles, then I can calculate roughly what I get over the whole head. So then I know how to adjust my work and how many cards and how to prioritize. And it's the same with vertices pretty much, but triangles is the default, I would say.
What's the I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that you encounter and the challenges inherent to the specialization that you have there. Like, so what are the main challenges that you encounter, either in your work on a day-to-day basis or just in general, being someone who is specialized in hair creation there? Like, what would people need to be aware of before they themselves decide that this is a specialization that they would like to do?
Thinking of what I've done since the start, one thing was to place the cards correctly, and to just, what I mean is to have hair visible from every direction, to give the viewer an idea of this hair is not flat stickers, it has volume. That was the main challenge that I had at the start, because it's just a flat surface. And then how do I make this look like a cinematic hair? Because that's always in my mind. It's like, how can I sell this as something that it's not? And then figuring out from there, that was the challenge. And then another challenge was whenever there's complex stuff like braids or dreadlocks, or just these things that require either many cards or a big chunk of the tri-count budget, and to put that in and not take the whole budget so that it fits within the haircut with the other cards. If it's a mixture of short or long hair with regular cards and with braids, then how do I make this work so that it looks decent? That was another one. What was the other one? Learning to do the textures for the cards, because there needs to be some sort of hair behavior in the textures. We can't rely just on cards. Like, if there's a clump of hair that is pointy at the end, like let's think of gelled short hair. I'm not going to make a fuzzy card so this is the card, these are the roots, and this is the tips of the hair. I'm not going to do it like this. If the hair is pointy, I'm going to make the texture pointy. So the behavior of the hair needs to be a bit on the texture so that it's easier on the cards. Because if I taper the cards, and then when they are, the cards are pretty low poly, usually they don't have that many segments, then if the card deforms a bit, it's it's rotated or whatever and it's tapered, then the texture looks low poly, and you get these haircuts that, even though they have a decent tri-count budget, because the textures are not exactly how they would be most efficient for the haircut, and the geometry deforms the textures, it looks lower poly than it should be. So that was something that I learned in time, that the hair behavior in the textures is, the textures do a lot of the heavy lifting, I feel, especially on short hair.
Yeah. What's harder there, to make a long haircut or make a short haircut?
I would say short hair.
Right? Yeah, I kind of have that intuition too, but that's not really obvious to people, I think.
No,
why is it harder to make a short haircut than to make a long haircut?
Well, when I started, I thought, short hair, sure, it's short hair, it's shorter, it's easier, right?
Yeah, there's less of it, yeah.
But one thing is, there's lots of cards, and if there's not enough cards, and if they're not placed correctly so that there's volume on them, you end up with these flat surfaces that, when the specular is on them, it just looks like something polygonal somehow. If that makes sense. You have a sphere that's unsmoothed, and then when the specular moves on it, you get the polys. Then
it's
another
harder
thing
to convince people that this is a real haircut. If you have short hair, there's less for you to play with. There's less room for error. When you have long hair, you can just cover it up with something, right? If it doesn't work. But short hair, it's like you can't cheat nearly as well.
Yeah, you can. And the direction of the hair is important as well. The hair growth, because the shorter it is, the more obvious the direction of the hair growth is. Then the textures. The textures are something that it's something that I tried to learn, at least in the first few months, first year, even now. I try to learn something on every haircut that I'm working on, right? So this was something for the textures of the hair. The length of the strands, I like to have these are the strands of hair, and if it's long hair, the tips of it will be roughly around in the same place, because the texture gets stretched, and then the distance between the tips of the textures will increase as well as the cards stretch. But on short hair, they either squish or they are around the same. So then I like to have variety. If the longest strand of hair is here, the shortest one is maybe close to half of it. So then that gives nice blending between the cards when they are on the head. And that works out for me, makes it easier with the card placement on the head, rather than having these blocks of hair that then end up looking like feathers on the head.
Yeah.
That was something that I found in time.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for a few years. Do you see yourself continuing to do this for a few years, or are you looking for the exit from this kind of specialization?
I don't think I want to give it up, because I enjoy it. And if I would say right now that I am not going to do this anymore, I think I will regret it. But I do want to learn more about characters. So I'm learning anatomy. I need to get better at that. And I want to practice and improve my designing abilities, because I want to make characters and make my own designs and all that. So that's what I want to do along with hair. So these are my long-term focuses.
Right. Okay.
I've narrowed it down to this.
What about finding... So right now, are you working as a freelancer? Are you working for a studio? What's your employment status? I mean, not necessarily right now, as of this day right now, but in general, what's your employment status like, if you will?
Yeah, I'm a freelancer.
Is it easy? Is it hard to get contracts?
I think it can be for new people, because I feel you need to prove yourself, but that's not just for hair, it's for anything really. And you have to have connections, because a lot of it relies on connections and talking to people and recommendations. And the portfolio, obviously you need to have a portfolio so that can prove that you can do things.
I guess what I'm wondering is, so for someone who would be interested in potentially picking up hair as a specialization there, what should they expect? Is this an easy road that's ahead of them? Is it easy to get a job? Is there a lot of competition? Do you have a feeling of how that compares to someone who's more of a generalist in terms of character art?
I feel there's quite a bit of requirement for hair now because it got more attention than it did a few years ago, and people want to have nice hair in their games. So I feel there's a bit more attention on it than it was before. And I think there is work available.
Yeah, but do you feel like you're getting like completely swamped with like contract offers, or like do you have to like really work hard to get all the contract offers that you get? You know, like what is the offer, if you will, of job opportunities versus the amount of people who are doing this as a specialization?
I think there's enough work for hair, to be fair, because I've well, I've quit my job in February, and my plan was to take a sabbatical and just train on things, but then stuff happened and I just couldn't refuse. So there's definitely work for everyone, and I keep on having people asking me if I know people who are available to do hair work, which makes me think, yes, there is work available and not enough people.
So if you want to be a hair specialist, get friends with Andreea Scubli and she'll send you a few contracts over. You're gonna get like swamped with like emails. Andreea, here's a haircut I did recently. I shouldn't like tell people to do that. That's probably not a good thing.
I'll try to reply. I appreciate it when people reply to me, so I'll do my best to reply if someone writes to me.
You do seem to me like a very social girl, although at the same time I'm kind of wary of people's private life there. You know, like we had a few people like in the past doing interviews here. You know, it's like I respect that people don't necessarily leave their personal email where to contact them, because you know ultimately, like we all have very limited time in life to to do the things we want to do. And I think that you're already so kind to be here and to give us a bit of your time. I'm trying
thank you for having me here.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. I think the honor is all mine, really. Yeah. So, does doing hair, like, have you found yourself to be more interested in hair in general? I mean, I assume the answer is yes, of course, but like, like sometimes I'm kind of thinking like what kind of personality, what kind of interests in life does it take for this to be something that we like to do? Like, is it to become a hair 3D artist that in another life we wish that we were a hairstylist, or like what's the story there? You know, like are you like more interested in hair now that you were before? Did you always find yourself to be particularly interested in hair, or is this just something that just happened a little bit by accident? Which is I think a little bit of what you were saying before, but like how are your interests kind of tied up to you being a hair specialist?
I don't think it's really tied up, to be honest. I've always been a bit of a more technical person than creative in the past. That's why I really like the modeling stuff and just careful to the topology and stuff like that. And I feel like hair was a bit of that. And I like, if something breaks in the house, I like to find a way to fix it, for example. So I feel like this is something like that, just because it's something like
you love a technical challenge involved in
that. I think so.
What's your favorite part?
I don't want to be a hairdresser.
What's your favorite part of the hair creation process? Is it that kind of retopology, UV stage? Is it creating the textures originally? Is it looking for references? Is it thinking through, okay, how can I create a haircut? Like, what's the most pleasant part of the experience of creating a haircut?
I like creating the textures and then trying them. And if I see that something doesn't work, I go back and change them if the project allows it, if it's not a commitment from the start of the project. I like creating them. I like it when I'm about... I don't know, a third in or closer to halfway when it has like a decent shape and it's in engine and I can see the shader better and how it's reacting, and I can tweak the shader and tweak lights and I can see it coming together. I guess I like that sense of progress and seeing how it's evolving and how it's getting towards what I want it to be. But I do enjoy the process of making it and putting things together and seeing it get better. And even when something doesn't work and it looks ugly, I'm like, okay, this doesn't work, but it had to happen so that I know not to do this and that it can be better after this. So I know it's part of the process and I like it.
Yeah. So experimentation is part of the process. It's part of the job. It's part of learning how to make a great haircut there.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I think it's a very healthy way to approach that. Like sometimes, I guess that's more for like people who are either starting their first few characters, who are juniors, these sorts of things. They're very afraid of the concept of failing, of making something and not having it work. And they're kind of afraid of that. Like, oh my God, I've done this and it doesn't look good. I failed. I'm like, and then they feel like super miserable, But it's not something like you have a very healthy relationship with experimentation, with the idea that you try something, it may not work, but if it doesn't work, then you'll learn something and then you'll try it differently the next time and then maybe it's going to work, So I guess iteration to and experimentation is a big part of the job of really creating a good haircut then, I suppose.
Yeah, but it applies to characters, to everything.
I think so too, yeah.
There's a level of mistakes that everyone has to go through to get to a point where to avoid these things, and you just do it maybe in one go or you do it faster, but those mistakes, they have to happen.
Yeah. For me, there's really two things. Like when I mentor people, there's really two things that I have to not necessarily break, but that I really have to work to get people to try to really kind of understand or assimilate, because a lot of people kind of struggle with that. First is that idea that iterations are good. You want to spend a bit of time on something, and then if it doesn't work, then you haven't spent a lot of time on it. You want to put it aside. You want to try something else instead. So you want to experiment. And you want to iterate like that. Second thing, I completely forgot it. Or maybe those were the two things. I wanted to say a second thing and I completely forgot it there. I'm like, oh my God, no. It's like my train of thought just left the station there. But yeah, no, like that role of experimentation. Oh yeah, it's just that concept of failure there, It's like, the concept of failure is closely tied to the concept of iteration and experimentation. The other thing is that it's okay and it's quite normal when you are creating something complex to have to redo it multiple times in different ways. Like when we're talking about hair, right? Like part of the hair creation process is you create a sketch first, right? You don't want to just start to place polygons directly on a head, because you don't really know where you're going, right? It's like first you got to sketch it out, and then once it's sketched out, then you have to kind of figure out, okay, where do I go from here? Now I can create the higher res version, or not the high res version, but the the proper final version there. It's like you have to redo a haircut multiple times in a way,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you say that's true, or?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the project as well, because some when you're working for someone, they might change their mind along the way, and they, even if you think that this is okay, but then they think that it doesn't really match what we have on another character or something, so they can change their mind. So that's part of iteration. It's just not you iterating on it. And then when you're doing it, I feel like if I'm doing something and I'm doing it like this hair here that we have, I started something, but I had a pretty good idea because I made a ZBrush sketch at the start. So having a bit of pre-planning at the start, that helps as well.
Yeah, you don't go straight to creating the final low-res haircut.
Yeah. It depends on the references you get. Like if you're on a project and the client sends you references and they're good enough and they're specific, then you might skip the sketch stage because you know exactly what they want. But it's different every time, really.
Have you ever been in a situation that the client seemed sure of what they wanted, and then you do it, and they're like, actually, no, let's have something else?
Yeah, it happened that they changed their mind a bit, but also some of them are really easygoing, and those are the best because you get all the artistic freedom that you want, and you do what you want, and if you like it, and then they'll like it because we like it.
Yeah, for me, that's one of the things too that I hear a lot about people who become specialized in something. You can let me know whether you think that's true or not, but like you get more that feeling of competency. You know, it's like people trust you more with something because they're specialized in a particular field. So people are like, oh, she's really good at doing hair, so let's give her more freedom to choose what is right for a particular haircut. Do you think that's true, or like does that kind of correlate with your own experience there? It's like people kind of seem to trust you, either trust you more or defer more to your own judgment of things?
I think so, because if they already see that you've done something and it's good, they will know that you can do it again.
Yeah.
Just in a different shape.
Yeah.
So I think that if they see that you have done it before and they know that you are capable, if you are capable to do something, surely you are capable to do this as well. At least that was my experience.
Yeah, you know, like if you have a lot of great haircuts in your portfolio there, people will trust you because they know that you can do a great haircut because it's in there, you know? Yeah, that's one of the drawbacks sometimes of being too much of a generalist. You know, like people who are like, I need to do something I haven't done before, or you know, like when you're a generalist, let's say in character art or just in general there, as far as 3D is concerned, you know, then there's a chance that you'll look for or find contracts that are related to things that you haven't actually demonstrated clearly in your portfolio that you're able to do, you know?
Oh, yeah.
That kind of makes it harder, right? Because people are like, well, are they really able to do this? You know, and yeah, like it does kind of color a little bit the how you deal with clients, I feel like.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I've had that before. So before hair, because I was a generalist, I've had a lot of the things that I've learned on the job, because that's how it was. It was always something else completely different. Now I was very, very, very fortunate, and I'm very grateful that I've always had someone to help me if something didn't work out. And then Google's there to answer questions all the time. It just takes a bit more time, but yeah, I see what you mean. There's a level of trust, and there has to be good communication when you're not specialized on something, so that you can actually get to the result that the other person needs and the client needs. But yeah, there's always, at least my experience in the past, it's a bit different now, I suppose, because things evolved so much in the past 10 years. But yeah, there was always something. I've had, for example, like I've accepted a project before knowing ZBrush, and it was it was sculpts, and I knew I had the week until the project starts. I was like, okay, I have a week, so for the whole week I've just watched tutorials and videos and just everything that I could find the whole week. That was it, full time. And then I started the project, and I was very, very, very fortunate. I had a friend who knew ZBrush, and when something didn't work, because obviously no matter how many videos you watch, you have to actually try it.
Oh yeah.
Know where things are. So I've had questions, and he's been there to answer my questions, and it all worked out great. But I've had to do a lot of training and research on my own before something starts. So planning something ahead and having that amount of time to look into what you need to do, that was always helpful for me at the time. Now there's generalists who already know things, obviously, like I know people who already know, so it's like, yeah, I'm accepting the job, I've done these things before, I know all of them. But for me at the time, who was still learning lots of things, yeah, I need to have this time ahead of the project so I can adapt.
Yeah.
And it all worked out. It was always fine. I didn't have problems, but there was a lot of research and a lot of learning.
There's one more question I want to ask you before we take the break. So my experience doing hair, and I have done quite a few haircuts, nowhere near the number of what you have. But for me, like when I was doing haircuts, now it's a subject that I avoid as much as I can, really, which is why you're here to speak with hair with us here, is that idea that I could never, and yet there always was that desire to find tools to automate the low-res hair creation process. And yet, no matter how good tools seem to get, my own experience is that you always wind up having to place almost everything manually. And, like I tried tools like Ornatrix. I tried a lot of tools to kind of either scatter like hair cards over a head, either to help in the creation. Like I'm not saying that like we're kind of in the dark ages of time when it comes to tools, but at the same time, there is a lot of manual labor there. There, in my experience, hasn't been something when I was creating hair that really truly could make it so that doing a haircut isn't simply just a lot of elbow grease in there. What's your experience with that?
There is a lot of manual labor. There are some tools that can help, like the GS curve tool. I think it's called. Let me see. Yeah, people know it's very popular and many people use it for hair. I think it's GS hair tool. It's really, really nice. You can have multiple cards and control all of them through a spline, which is nice. And then there's studios who can have proprietary tools, but there's only so much you can automate out of the whole process. If it was fully automated, we would do haircuts in a day and we wouldn't have jobs for in-game hair, really.
Yeah.
But there is a manual. There is a lot of manual labor. If you use something that's like, let's say, XGen, which you have the guides and your grooming and whatever, and then you use those convert into cards. The problem with that is that it doesn't consider the intersections between the cards, and you end up spending all that time to clean up everything that you might as well just do it from the start and do it however you want. So it is still manual labor. I don't know of any magic way to make it fast. There are things that can make it a bit faster, a bit easier. Everyone works a bit different. Whatever works for them, everyone finds their own way to deal with it and to make it comfortable for themselves. But there's only so much you can speed up.
What are your favorite tools to use?
I just use Maya by default.
Anything specific in there that you rely on?
Just regular
vanilla
Maya
flavor.
with just smooth on, move the edges.
Yeah. Every few years, like I feel as if there's these tools that kind of come out that are supposed to like revolutionize how we create hair, and every time it's like, nah, you're still just moving stuff around manually in the viewport.
Yeah.
Because you have like one of the challenges, right, of creating hair is that you have to make sure that you're always kind of overlaying hair cards very carefully so that you fix any sort of what you said about intersections between the hair planes, but you also have to make sure that you get a nice amount of coverage. And, like there's just no tools that can really kind of do a job as carefully and as well as a human can.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, there can be different tools and scripts and stuff. I don't know scripting. I wish I would. Or I don't know. There are people who are obviously scripters, so I don't know. Maybe can figure out a way to do something that. But again, I don't know how much of that can be truly automated so that you can get nice results. Because it's like you get a painter who does the painting nice and manually, and then you get a partially drawn print from the shop and then you paint something on top of it. Or I don't know if that's the correct equivalent, but it's not the same. When you're doing it yourself, it's a bit different. Then it's like sort of like procedural texturing, I suppose. When you do the texturing yourself, and then you see something procedural that was done a lot faster, but you can instantly tell that this is procedural. When we switched from manual texturing, and you would do all the damage manually, and you would put it wherever you think it's right. It's like you got damage on this corner because this corner is exposed. But then a painter came out and everyone was doing procedural texturing, and you could instantly tell, yep, this is painter, this is not manual labor.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of interesting because I personally rely a lot on procedural tools still, but I do recognize that like if you're not careful enough with those, if you don't pay too much attention, you wind up having something that just looks a little too uniform or too, how can I say, not inconsiderate in terms of where the details are placed, but like if you place things manually, everything you place is with a certain purpose. It's there with a certain intent, There's certainly drawbacks to procedural tools for sure.
Yeah, you can certainly do great stuff with procedural. I'm not against it, not at all. But it's like just like any tool. The best tool in inexperienced hands won't do the same as it will for other person. You get I don't know, at least when I was a beginner, just put something on, is it looks good, and then someone with a bit more experience comes and look at it. You shouldn't really have damage in this cavity, because who damaged the cavity?
Yeah. You still got to think through, even if you like to use procedural tools, you still got to think, okay, like, is this supposed to be there? This kind of detail there? Should I remove it? It doesn't save you from having to do that mental workout of, okay, should these details be placed in the proper location? Or I see what you're saying. I fully agree with you as far as that's concerned. Especially when it comes to hair. Like I've tried a lot of procedural tools too for like low res hair creation, and it never works. It's like,
I didn't like it either.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess you'll show us all your secrets there as how to create a haircut using Maya there. And that's pretty much our second part of this interview here. Thank you so much again for being here, by the way.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's take a 10-minute break then. And then when we come back, let's really delve deep into the tools that you use and how you use them to create a really high quality haircut. So everyone, right now I'm looking at the time. It's 20 minutes past. So let's take a 10-minute break. Give you all a bit of a refresher there, and we'll see you all at 30 minutes past precisely. Enjoy the break. All right, we are back. Andreea, are you ready to start again?
I am.
Awesome, cool. All right. So I'm essentially going to hand it off to you because this is pretty much you are now in the driver's seat as far as the conversation is concerned. So the idea essentially is that for the next maybe 60, 90 minutes, we'll see how long it goes. You're essentially going to run us through the creation process, right, of hair from beginning to all the way to the engine integration there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to, what I'm going to do, I'm going to let you share your screen on Discord. And I will record that, of course, at the same time. And so for everyone who is watching, you have a choice. You can either watch my virtual camera, which may be low res, or you can watch Andrea's stream and hear us, but not necessarily see our face at the same time. It's up to you to do what you want there. But I will be recording myself, us with our face in the corners of the screen for posterity there. Okay, so we can see your screen. You can see our face. We're good to go. Andreea, you can get us started here. Let's talk about hair creation from the beginning.
Let's. Okay, so I wasn't sure exactly what to do. I knew I wanted something that covers more than just one simple long hair or one simple short hair or something. So I knew I wanted some sort of combination of different things. And I always enjoyed working on dreadlocks and braids. So I thought, I'm going to make dreadlocks and braids. And then I thought, what if I have a cap as well that is visible? That way we can go through the cap creation and baking and all.
Yeah.
So my initial idea was, I saw these 3 images. I'm like, okay, something along the lines of this. And then I started gathering more references, because I like to gather references for each part of the hair. If it's not something like a bob hair, which is pretty simple. There's not something very different going on in it. So then for this, I looked for reference, a few of them for long hair, so that I can see how the clumps of hair behaves, how the flyaways, the negative space, the gaps between the clumps where shadows can be cast, and it just gives it contrast and depth. So I found a bit of long hair, and then the fringe, so that I can see how it clamps together, and I wanted something uneven. So I saved these images, and then for the flow of it, so that I can see how it is departing and how it divides and how it what flow it has and how it flows towards the one side of the head. Then I've got something for the braid.
You got like everything in there. It's like in your hair, you're like long hair, short hair, fringe hair, braids. Like let's just throw all of that in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's good, you know, like as a teaching tool, I suppose. Like it's great because like people get to see everything in a way through the creation of this particular haircut. I don't think we've shown the haircut yet either, right? I guess you can save that as a suspense after you're done talking about the reference. Why not? Like at this point, but it's going to be cool to look at the haircut right after we're done talking about the references.
I need to find the images. Okay. Let me see the
yeah. Let's go through the reference. Yeah.
I can go in. I'll go in Unreal. I don't need to open the images. Right. So we got the braid. I found some references for the braid so that I can see how the parting between the very short hair and how it flows into the braid, and then the separation between the braid and the longer hair. I really like these two. Yeah, that was for the braid. Then I got the section for the short hair, so that this was particularly useful for the direction of the hair growth. These two were really, really nice, and for the
I love the flow of hair there.
Yeah, they're really, really, really cool.
Yeah, that is something you have to pay attention to, right? Like when you're creating hair, like we don't necessarily think about that always, but like hair flow is very important, right? Because hair does not always just uniformly flow in one direction, right? Like as we can see on these references, hair flows in a lot of different weird ways, and it curves and it does all of that weird stuff over a head, right?
Yeah, it does. I like to think about that. It's a bit annoying for especially for new people. They're on a deadline, and they don't have enough time to research these things and to understand why the hair has this curvature on the growth, for example, or the crown at the back. I actually don't have an image of it, but the crown at the back, on most people it's on one side, but some people put it straight in the middle. It's not unusual, it's more rare. But it's something to, again, it's part of the research, which I enjoy, but it's a shame that some people, when they're on a job, they don't have time to research these things and to understand and to just learn it and put it into their work. They're just rushed and getting a sense of okay, let's just have some hair that looks like hair. But
I want to talk about flow more because it's a very interesting topic. So you're saying that the crown is not usually centered?
That's what I found. Yeah, it's usually on one side.
Insane. You've just like broken one of my like biggest misconceptions, I suppose. I'm like, the crown is always centered. It's like, no, it's usually not centered. Actually, it's probably very few people then, I suppose, where it's right in the center.
That's what I found. Because for a long time, I thought it's in the center as well. And then as I was looking for references, I noticed that it's usually on one side. Mine is on one side. It's on towards my right side. I call it the swirl because the hair just swirls in that area.
Everyone's gonna touch themselves now. Oh, where? If yours is centered, you are one of the special ones. Yeah, just before we move on from hair flow, one of the other very interesting questions that I have that I really want to know, is the hair flow something that you recognize as being kind of the same for everyone, or is it always kind of different? You know, like does everyone kind of always have the hair kind of flowing in the same direction, or is it like everyone has a completely different like sort of pattern of how the hair sort of naturally flows over a head?
As far as I could see when I was looking for references and just reading about it, it's generally around. It's got this curvature where the. You know what? Let me open a scene.
Look at that.
I get to that again. We've got the block out for the cap, and I can actually explain on that. No, I need to set the project first.
That's such a great haircut.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. When you said like, oh, I'll make a haircut, I'm like, okay, I guess we'll wind up having a very like simple short hair. Like, and then you get that out. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, Andrea, I don't know. I knew you were good, but that's just
that's so crazy.
extremely impressive. So this is the cap that we're looking at.
Yeah, so this is the cap. So see, like, this is based on what I've found so far and read about it. There's actually documents about the hair growth direction and the way the follicles of the hair are directed, and that's pointing the hair to shoot one way or another. And this is what I found, that this swirl thing, the crown area, this is biased towards one side. There's also people who have two of them, and it looks like an owl head.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's very, very rare. Saw that in, I think it was a YouTube video of people waiting in a queue, and someone in front of the guy that was filming had short hair, but it wasn't this short, but it was enough so that this swirl was very obvious, and he had two symmetrical, well, going, the opposite directions, but they were on both sides, and it looked exactly like an owl.
That makes sense now. Like when you go to the hairdresser, she's like, okay, like where do you part your hair usually, And like I may be one of those weird ones where my swirl is near the center line, because I'm like, well, I can kind of part my hair at, like right now I'm kind of parting my hair, like it's not quite on the center, but I can actually part my hair from anywhere really. I'm like, that question, I guess because my swirl is near the center, I'm like, that question never really made too much sense for me. But looking at this right now, it makes total sense. It's like everyone's got a natural parting like space that's very different depending on where your swirl is over your hair. Anyway, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Let's come back to the cap, but first let's continue going through those references, and let's go through that haircut that you've created too.
Right, just going to answer the question because I didn't really answer it before. What I found is that generally people have this curvature here.
Okay.
And then the hair here, it can either go a bit downwards if the hair is a bit longer, or just it depends on it. There is a bit of variation between people, but as a rough idea, there's this curvature, the hair here, and then at the back there's a bit of curvature on both sides, and the swirl, wherever it is positioned, it just feeds into these other areas. That's what I found, and it doesn't really look completely straight from other angles. There's a bit of curvature, just a tiny bit everywhere. That's what I found. At least that's what looks nice, and I saw on short hairs like these.
Yeah. So you can't completely take that for granted, is what you're saying. Like when you're looking at someone's hair, you kind of really have to study. Like in this case, you have pictures of a lot of different people, so you kind of, I guess, more or less have to sort of design your own hair flow in a way. But I guess if you are trying to make a likeness, even perhaps, this is something you have to actually pay attention to if you're looking at someone's hair. Yeah, if you want to capture it properly. Yep.
And the hairlines as well, because everyone has different hairlines. Some people who have more hair, this is coming like really close to the eyebrow, for example. Or this can be, some people have like a V shape here. Like, I don't know if you can see it. I have that.
Yeah, I have it too. Yeah.
So yeah, it's different for everyone, but as a general idea, I just follow this general flow, and then I go into more detail where I need to, especially on the hairlines, because when you're talking to a character, you're going to see the face, and if it looks off, you're going to notice it.
I've seen people, like, this is going to be like a bit of a weird one, but like I've seen people like usually guys, I've seen a few guys where their hairline, like they haven't lost a lot of their hair, so their hairline is very low. And there's almost a bit of a connection of hair, a very subtle one, but there's a bit of a connection of hair between the hairline and the eyebrows. Like I've seen that in a few guys where there's a few hairs that seem to connect the eyebrows all the way to the hairline. Like not frequently.
On the side, on the temple area.
Right there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they get really, really close to some people. Like
I know.
Really,
yeah. But like you can literally tell that there's hair connecting the two of those. Like it's weird. Like I just want to go in there with like a tweezer and just remove them, but I don't think that they would like that very much. Yeah.
Yep. I didn't. Even when I started working on hair, when I started, it was really a low try count. The first one that I worked on was, I think it was 5,000 triangles, including the cap. It was really low. So I didn't really, there was not much reason to pay attention to all of these things because it couldn't put it in anyway, because there's no resources for it. But I wasn't fully aware of it. And then as things progressed and I looked more into it, it's like, oh, hold on. There's stuff going on here.
Yeah. References so important, right? It's like it always comes back to that. You gotta always get references. Even if you're doing haircut, it doesn't matter. Just get a bunch of references. Always.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always references. Yeah. Then I saved some images for the patterns that were just shaved off. I wasn't sure exactly what to do, so I just shaved them. I saved these as an idea, and in the end, I just did something else. But it was just to see how the hair behaves and how they've done it, and the difference in the gradient of the hair and how it affects the haircut. So yeah, that's why I saved it. This was one of the initial ones, which had a bit of everything. I kept it there again, and yeah, that's it.
All right, let's look at the result of all that. Show us the result. Oh my god, so crazy. Oh, it's so good.
I made a blonde version for it as well, but
yeah. You can appreciate more, I think, the hair, right? When it's lighter, a little bit. Yeah,
it's a lot easier to hide things on dark hair. Way easier.
That's so crazy.
Just get away with.
Yeah. Just make it black. Yeah. That's crazy.
So yeah.
And you got the braids in there, and like the braids, you really feel that there's a very I don't want to use the word unkemptness because, I mean, you could say technically that's what. Sorry, not braids. The dreadlocks. Yeah, like there's such a crazy kind of variation in there. Like it doesn't feel like your dreadlocks. There's a repeating pattern there. Like you can really tell there's all these wispy hairs on them, and they all look very unique there. It must have taken you a long time. Or maybe not. You do. Okay, fine. Yeah. I mean, you're like, no, Laura, I've done this so many times. What are you talking about? This took me like.
I'll show you
an
how
hour.
I've done.
Please do.
It's basically cylinders wrapped in cards. That's
right.
It.
Okay. Yeah. So you start with a cylinder, which is like a very basic, I suppose, repeating texture. Maybe not repeating. And then you add little wispy stuff. Can we see the wireframe? That's like what everyone wants to usually. That's like the standard question that everyone has.
Yes.
Could you please show the wireframe?
Yes. Let me assign some materials, and I will show you. So that
I have so many questions for you. I swear I didn't take cocaine. I don't actually do that, but I kind of feel almost as if I did right now. Like there's so many things I want to ask you about.
Okay, for the wireframe, I'm not an Unreal expert, so if I enable it in the material, it shows the triangles and all, and I didn't like that, so I actually converted the edges on the cards into meshes and I imported it in, so that's the wireframe.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm kind of particularly interested right now in that dreadlock. Yeah, you can see all the cards. Yeah. And they're all interpenetrating, right? It's like, I used to work with someone who was like, no, your cards cannot interpenetrate at all because it's going to create like normal problems and stuff. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, as long as the alpha looks, like as long as the end result looks good. And I mean, you can't make a haircut without having stuff interpenetrating left and right?
Yeah, it's very, 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 very difficult. They are intersecting a lot, but it's all noise anyway. So
yeah.
Never ever have I had someone complain about this.
So do you like, for a dreadlock like that, like, I know we have a set program that we said that we were going to go through, and we were going to go through these steps in a very logical way. And here I am just throwing everything out. I'm like, no, Andrea, I want to talk about this. It's just that I have so many questions, and they all seem interesting to me. So for that dreadlock, because I'm particularly focused on that right now, do you create that dreadlock in isolation as a sausage, and then you kind of use curve tools to place it overhead? Or do you use a different approach for that?
Yeah, it started as a straight cylinder.
Okay.
And then I think most people use curves. I use bones. So I actually rigged it to a few bones, and then I put it on the head. Curves are nice as well, but I found it can be a bit slow. So I just use bones. Because, I don't know, I just found that works for me. And that's how I placed it there. And then I just duplicated it all over, maintaining the connection between the geometry and the bones.
Cool. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I'll let you take us to the next logical step from here.
Yeah. So we got the references, and then I made some zebra sketches. Just to get an idea of about where it's going. And I started with the scanned head. So this was the start of it. I knew I wanted to have some patterns there, but you see now they were different. And just a blob of hair to get an idea about the volume.
Yeah.
And then...
Would you say it's good advice to always start with a sketch, by the way? Like, I know that once you're an expert and, you know, like, you can cut that corner if you want, but, like, if you're talking to someone who's a junior, would you say always do a ZBrush sketch, first of all?
I think it's a good idea because it gives you an idea about the overall volume, and then you can take this into whatever program you're using and use it as a guide for the cards so that you don't struggle with the cards. Because if you place the cards and you're working on it, you're working for a day, and then you realize, the volume is not right. I need to move stuff in. I need to make adjustments, but that creates cards intersections, and then you need to fix that. But if you have this as a guide, then that cuts down the room for error.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. For me, one of the biggest issues I had creating hair was that issue of volume. It's very easy to add too much volume to hair when you're creating hair. Mm-hmm. It's like you just make hair that just looks like a fucking, like someone's got a 1980s like hairspray filled like haircut there, and you're like, oh shit, I need to reduce that. You know, like it's so easy to get the volume wrong when you're placing, and you have that tunnel vision. You're placing one plane at a time. You're not really thinking too much about the volume, especially if you don't have the like volume that you've defined at a time. It's very easy to get that wrong, you know. But when you do a sketch, like you're saying, it's like volume. You can figure out the volume that your haircut is supposed to fill ahead of time.
Yep. And this can be more detailed as well. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, because on some projects, the clients actually want a detailed sculpt so that they can see exactly where the final hair will be. So it all depends. But in this case, for me, a rough one was enough. I added a bit of detail in it just to get an idea that there's some clumps of hair overlapping, and maybe put some stuff on the dreadlocks. In the end, I changed a bit the position of the dreadlocks. I don't think I have this one here anymore. So this was the next one. And then I got the awesome head that you sent me. This is the best head ever. And this is...
I was going to let you take the full credit for that, but sure, thanks.
No, it's not mine. But yeah, it was awesome. It's awesome. So yeah, cool. The hair, this is the stage that I left it at, the hair. And then I thought, put some accessories on it, and I blocked them out so that there's some, I don't know, techie whatever. And then for the patterns, let's see if I still have layers for it, because I wasn't sure about the patterns either. Well, I don't think I saved them.
How much time do you spend on sketch?
Not much, really. I think it was maybe, I don't know, I think it was a few hours, it was more for the cap to figure out this, because at first I had that other pattern that was here, and then I made another one which it was basically just lines, just putting lines there to see what it looks like. So that was more. But for this sketch, it's not too much. It's not a tricky one to do. I made the sphere, then I pulled it, and I just made some lines in it. But if you go more into detail and start adding flyaways and stuff, it can easily be a day or 2 days, depending on how complex it is and how polished it is. So it can easily take some time.
Yeah, but that still is pretty fast, 1 or 2 days. I mean, I think there too that speaks to your own experience, but
I'm no ZBrush expert. I know there's some people who do it a lot, do it fast, but it all depends on what the client needs, because what they want to see, the flow of the hair, the volume, the clumpiness of it. They want to see where it's going.
Yeah.
And there's all of these insert mesh brushes which help speed up the process. I don't have one loaded here, but there's plenty of them on Gumroad, for example, and there's just a bunch of cylinders basically, and they have different poly groups to them. So then you can move them individually and create these clumps of hair. So those are really, really useful for hair.
That's how you created those dreadlocks, I assume. Or not?
The braid was definitely an IMM brush.
Yeah.
And these, I think it was that, or either that, or I used the snake brush and just pulled it out and fixed it.
Oh, right. Yeah, but that could have been created using an IMM brush that already has that kind of texture on there as you're looking for. Yeah. Like the thing about Sketch, right, is that it's within the name of it. It's a sketch. Like the idea isn't to do a final version of it. It's just to get the idea down so that you kind of know where you're going afterward. And like if you are working for a client, like you're saying, so that you can present this to the client before you spend however many days it's going to take you to place all the individual hair planes. You kind of want to have their validation that you're going in the right direction. But it's also for yourself too. Like I find that even when you're doing something for yourself, doing a sketch, it saves you time. Like people think that it's like, oh, but that it's going to take me a full day or 2 days or 3 days to do this. It's like, yes, it will, but it will probably save you even more time down the line, because you're going to be doing less figuring out when it will actually be a lot harder to do those iterations there. Because when you're placing the lower as polygons and stuff, right, it becomes very complicated to do changes. Whereas in this case here, you can actually, and I love that you have different versions of this haircut too at the sketching stage. Like you've shown us a few different versions, or a few very slightly different designs and stuff. So you're really thinking through everything related to your own personal design. And really making sure, I feel like, that you've really figured out the actual design before you really move on to creating the actual low res that will be used in the game.
I think, like you're saying, it's about the efficiency of it, because there's not really much point in spending a lot of time doing something tedious to then need to redo it because because it was wrong, and it's just, you can solve that by doing this quickly.
Yeah. So those IMM brushes, I guess, like I have seen. Do you know where people could get that braid, by the way?
I think I got it from Gumroad. Braid brush. I'll find them and I'll find some links. If I Google it, never mind my tabs. But
oh wow, that is interesting. I'm kind of also that's
it's possible that they got this is the one they're not loaded here, and I need to clean up my computer, so I don't want to keep you waiting for me to scroll through my folders.
But there's also something like I'm sure you know about this, but people may not necessarily know about this. There's such a thing. I mean, I assume that thread still exists, but on ZBrush Central, there was something called the IMM repository, like thread or like super thread. If you type in like ZBrush Central IMM repository, like there was like this thread on ZBrush Central that was like pages and pages and pages long, just of so many, that one. So many different IMM of different styles, of different flavors for different things. It just keeps on going forever, and there's so much stuff in there. That's interesting, you know?
Oh, wow.
And there
Oh,
are
look at that.
braids. There's so much stuff in here. There's such a crazy amount of stuff. And like, it's all free. So like, people should go and just snag everything that's there. Because, you know, like forums, they're about to, like, they're probably going to disappear at some point. So people should just like, just grab everything that's there while it still exists. Because this is a gold mine that a lot of people may not necessarily know about.
I didn't know about it. This is so cool.
There's so much shit in there. There are a bunch of braids in there too. I'm pretty sure at some point. If you just go through the pages.
Wow. Oh, look at that.
I know. They may have gotten rid of the concept of pages there, but yeah, you can see there's at least like 600 different posts in there. There's so much shit in there.
Wow. I'm definitely going to scroll through this.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, there's shoelaces in there too? Oh my God. Like these things have been there forever, right? Like if you look at the timestamps, right? Like I can't quite see clearly, but I think it says September 12th. Yeah, it's been there for like almost 10 years, yeah.
Damn.
There's so much shit in there.
Oh, yeah, this is great. So, yeah, find some
find some braids, yeah. You don't have to pay for them. Yeah. You can find some clear ones for sure.
This one, I see this one is 0+ as well.
Yeah, that's cool too.
Yeah, this one. And there's other like this one as well. So all these segments, they have different polygroups and they're actually like separate cylinders and you can move them separate. So if you make the big clump like this using the big one and then with topological on for the brush, you can move the polygroups and then you break the flow of that clump and put some detail into it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that's the sketching stage, pretty much.
Yeah.
So we get here, so we do a sketch, and so we move on from the sketch when we say, okay, I have my design down, I have my volumes down, I kind of know where I'm going, right? That's the basic gist of it?
Yeah.
All right. So what comes after that? This is all Dynamesh too, by the way, right? Like, sorry to cut you off there, but that's all Dynamesh stuff too, right? Like there's no crazy retopology, there's no nothing. It's all very dirty geometry.
No, it's just...
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, no carefulness happened here.
All right.
Okay, then planning out the textures for the card. And for that, I usually go back to my references and I spend quite a lot of time looking at references. I never jump into doing something without having an idea of what to do. So if I was looking here, I know that I need to have a thin clump. I know that I need to have something denser and wider. Then I needed something for the braids. And I knew I needed noisy stuff for the dreadlocks. I knew I needed something to cover shorter hair for the fringe. Then for flyaways, I needed something. For the segments of the braids here, basically just went through them and tried to break everything down into clumps of hair and how I can translate that into my textures.
So and you really figure out everything, like you think through every type of hair that you will have to represent on your head, right? You sort of categorize everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty much. And then I try to divide my texture into what I need. So I know I need long hair. I know I need short hair. I know I need noisy hair for the dreadlocks. And then in between those, I can figure those out as I go. But I need to have the main points for what I'm going to use. And then I started with a sketch of the textures. This was really fast. I did it in Photoshop. So I knew I need to have different densities for the hairs so that when the cards stack together, there's depth on them because we're working with flat cards, we need to give it depth so that we fake the idea of 3D. And then I divided them into 3 types of densities. So I knew I have to have the densest one, which is almost not see-through because there's so many hairs. And then I thought this would be for long hair. Then I need something for the dreadlocks. Then I need flyaways, and then I need short hair. And this can be the hair that feeds into the braids, that starts on the head and then go into the braid, that segment. So this was the initial thought. This was really fast. It was like 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah. So you really plan out, like before you even spend time creating the texture itself, you just go in Photoshop and you're like, okay, I expect to have this. So you're really planning out from like the densest cards you think you'll need to the sparsest cards, I suppose, that you will need. How many, like, this is a very complex haircut that you have created here. In general, like for someone who's like looking at a simpler haircut, who's kind of thinking through, okay, how many different strands of hair do I need to create? Do you go by like a general rule? Like how do you usually figure that out? Is there a number that kind of always kind of averages around? Like we can see here, we can count 1, 2, 3. There's like 60, maybe 20 different individual clumps of hair here. Is there like a number that you come back to as in like, this is the average that a particular haircut usually needs? Or do I not know what I'm talking about here?
No, that's a very good point. Let's say it's a bob hairstyle, right? Because that's easy. It's just straight hair that is as short as about where the neck starts, where the the skull ends. That's where the hair ends, and maybe there's a bit of, well, usually there's a bit of a fringe. So we've got that straight hair. So for that one, I would probably go for around maybe 2 cards on each density. So that makes it, it would be 2 of the densest ones so that we can have one that's wide and one that's thin. Because the thin ones are my favorite because they fit everywhere. You have a gap somewhere, just put one of these, it's done.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah.
The thin ones are great. And then we need something to put on top of it. So this one, we see through this one and we see that one. This one casts shadows on that one and gives it a bit of depth. So we have 2 of those. And then we can have 2 of those that are even less strands of hair and go on top of this one. So then this one with this one on top, with the next one on top, and then we have a clump of hair. Ta-da! Well, imaginary one now. But so 2 for each of them, and then we can have some extra flyaways and some shorter ones for the hairlines that are just shorter ones that feed into the longest one to make a nice transition on the hair. So we can have I don't know, up to 12, 16 could easily make a nice haircut with those numbers.
Yeah. Could we put a name down on each density level? So there is very dense, of course, which is kind of the base of the hair. Then on top of that, you have kind of sparse-ish, but somewhat covered. Could we like either add a name to that or kind of define these somehow, like the different levels of density that you usually encounter within a haircut?
I think people are using different names for it. This one is the base one, and then you get the breakdown or mid, and then the outer or detail, or I'm not exactly sure what names they have.
Yeah.
Those are more like flyaways, because flyaways tend to be separate, and they only have like maybe, there's even one that has 1 strand of hair that's for flyaways.
Do you like categorize in your mind the different density levels usually?
Yeah, I usually think of them just as different densities, but you can think about them as that way. This is the base. This is the densest one that doesn't. It's just like a block out of the hair, and then this one, which breaks this one down, adds more detail on it. The mid layer, it can be the breakdown layer, and then the outer layer. I'm not sure how to name it actually.
Okay, no, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Like, I kind of like that idea of primary, secondary, and tertiary. Like, I don't know whether that kind of translates well in this particular case. You seem like what I'm seeing here right now is 4 different densities. There's like the very kind of very primary-ish, very dense one. Then on top of that, you got those kind of breakdown ones that are there to cast a shadow and sort of really add variety and kind of break that repetitiveness that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I guess you have more details.
more detailing to everything.
And then you have number 4, which is maybe that very extremely wispy, very flyaway thing, which is like just individual hairs almost that would be on a plane, right?
Yeah, the flyaways are. Actually, most of them are these.
Oh, they're super thin there. Yeah.
Yeah, the ones that kind of break the silhouette and catch the light. If there's a rim light somewhere, they catch the light. And we put the texture back on.
Okay.
So you can see them better.
Yeah. And then like I can see in all of these densities that we've defined, you seem to have wide and thin, wide and thin, wide and thin, you know? So you would probably wind up having like, if you're kind of following what we're saying here, what we're kind of laying out as like, you know, and of course what we're laying out here will never be exactly that for, you know, because each haircut has to be treated sort of separately just each haircut has to be treated in a separate way, right? But you kind of wind up having like almost 8 planes. You have wide, dense, thin, dense, wide breakdown, thin breakdown, in a way, kind of, you know, like as a bit of a general rule, you know, that's kind of the basic sort of schema that you can expect to have.
I'll show you a bit when I get to the textures as well. But look, this is the densest one.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's great. That's so good.
Rotate this a bit, so you can. They're not really see-through. You can't see through them much.
You know,
they're very, very dense. And then on top of it,
yeah, go for it. Go for it. No, go for it.
Then there's the mid layer. This is actually very helpful with making the LODs as well.
The mid layer makes such a big difference.
Yeah, it just adds detail to everything, and you can fill in gaps that were left. But yeah, this is the mid one.
Okay.
And then there's the outer one, which has even less strands of hair on it. See, this one only has a few, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of breaks the flow as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like on this clump, for example. So this one, the general shape of it is that it's going this way and then it's flowing down. But with the outer one, I kind of broke it. And I made a bit of variation on it. It's like the hair was sliding down. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah. Yeah, it's like every level that you unhide, I'm like, that is so good. It looks so beautiful. And then you unhide the next level, and it's like, oh my God, it looks so good. But it's funny because like when you were at that kind of either like primary stage or like dense stage, you know, it's like it kind of reminds me, it's like that's kind of almost PS2 level hair, almost kind of, you know, maybe that's even a bit denser than what we had then, but like this is kind of more or less what we had a few console generations ago, you know. And I think PS3 maybe is when you can like start to see the appearance of those kind of breakdown hairs, you know, but it adds so much texture. Although, like, you know, the thing that's also kind of makes me realize looking at this haircut right now is that just at this kind of dense stage, you know, like you've figured out at this stage, you've already blocked in all of your major volumes. You've already solved, it feels like, most of the, not necessarily intersections, but the places where you could see the scalp through there. You fixed all of the kind of holes that you had in there, you know. I assume that it takes a long time. I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves again, but it's just so interesting what you're showing us right now, you know. Like, you can really break this down, and I assume that that is your approach. Like, you really go through each step one at a time, but like this primary stage does seem to me to be like the base on which everything else rests, you know? Like this has to be solid before we move on.
Yeah, it is. The blockout is very, very important. I take my time with the blockout because everything that comes on top of it, it's the reflection of that blockout. So it's like having a sketch. If you have a bad sketch and you continue and you keep on polishing that, you're polishing a piece of dirt. So the sketch needs to be good so that then it's just everything comes naturally and it's just easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like building a house on a bad foundation. It doesn't work very well and just cause problems along the way, and it makes things more difficult. So for me, blockout is very important because that's when I set things right. And then it's just easy. It's just putting things on top of it.
You make it sound so simple.
difficult. Just once you get the hang of it, it's just it's not difficult. You just need to get the hang of it and do it a few times.
Yeah. Oh,
so yeah, see the
so good.
The
mid
layer. Yeah, it's
mid-layer.
Following. Yeah, the other one.
It's really the mid layer. Like the job of the mid layer is really to break that feeling of individual planes that you can see, right? It's like that under layer, that kind of dense layer. It's like it looks good. You can see the flow is great, but you can clearly tell that they are individual planes that are all kind of very separated there. But it's really when you unhide that mid layer that the hair really comes alive to me. It's really when everything starts to really look like a real haircut. You really see that rather you stop seeing the clear separation between the individual hair clumps and everything starts to look way more organic. It's a very, very important step, it feels like, yeah. But you're not changing the volumes. You're not really adding coverage. It's really just there to make it more organic. That mid-layer kind of thing.
Yep.
So cool. So cool.
Then the outer one.
Oh, so good. So like if you were to define what is the primary goal of the third layer, like what would that be?
To break things down even more. And if I really like this and the flyaways, see how there's these huge gaps between the clumps of hair, which we get in our hair, because it just clumps, especially when the hair gets dirtier. It clumps together more, and we get these gaps, which are really, really nice because they read from a distance as well. You don't end up with a block of hair when you have those, so they're really important. And what I like with the outer layer is just to put some detail on them, like on this one. Ta-da! There's more stuff.
Yeah.
And this as well.
You don't realize what's missing until you unhide the third layer, and then you realize, oh yeah, all of that detail was kind of missing from there. Yeah, because you're really starting with that third layer to really get that feeling that there are individual hairs in there that are really kind of flowing and sort of, a bit rebellious. They're not following what everything else is kind of doing there.
Yeah. And breaking the flow a bit of everything, just because I'm always thinking the hair is somehow very organic, or imagining a cloth simulation or a hair simulation, and there's gravity, and it slides down. It's I don't know, sort of like not fluids, but it slides, it moves. It's not a rigid thing. So I'm always thinking, how, if I can put that in there somehow, suggest it, then that's great.
Yeah, it's really good. And then the flyaways?
The flyaways.
It's that extra tiny little detail that just makes it all look so much more interesting.
Yeah, these are the first that get deleted on the flyaways, on LODs. Because when it's like this far away, you don't see them.
You don't see them. Okay,
so that's I find it just one thing. I find it useful when the mesh is separated into these parts. Makes it easier with the LODs.
Yeah, that makes complete sense there. So let's go back to the texture creation then. So we can see like each individual kind of level of detail. Maybe that's not the right word to use in this case, but density level perhaps. Like we can see clearly here that there are 4 density levels that are very, very interesting. So you think through, okay, for each density level, like once again here, like obviously this has to be adapted for each individual haircut, but we can see that there's a thinking of, okay, I have 4 density levels, and then beyond that I need thick and thin, thick, thin, kind of more or less for like each density level a little bit.
Yep. So this was one of the first iterations that I did. And you can see that I didn't entirely respect the sketch that I did, but the sketch was a start for me. That was the start point. And then I've got these. I've got the densest ones. These two, I thought these will be good for long hair and for the shorter one. This for the fringe. These will be for the dreadlocks. Now on these, I've changed them. I will show you 2 more textures for until the final one. Well, one more and then the final one. But for example, on this one, I thought this will get stretched a lot. So this strong S shape will be stretched. But the problem with this was that this line here, it's almost horizontal. So when that gets stretched, you end up with a strand of hair that is very, very thick. And that's not nice.
Yeah, okay. So
later on, I changed that.
Okay.
Then this is the next version, and you can see I've refined it more. This one was pretty rough to give me a start to work with, and we've got those densities. I still kept them. So we've got the densest one, the mid one that is more see-through, and then the other ones that are even more see-through. And then as I edited, I still kept that. I've got the dense one and the thin one that is the equivalent to it, because I don't really like squishing it, because you can easily squish this one to get a thin card, but then the hairs on it, if it's on a close-up, well, this particular one, which is buried underneath all the cards, won't really be visible, but I still don't like it, because when it gets squished, the strands of hair, they get really, really thin. And or if you do that, for example, on one of these, because alpha is still creating issues, sometimes some of the hairs might even disappear. It just looks wrong. So I try to keep the hair strands uniform across the head. I don't like having some strands of hair that are just like one size, and then on top of all of them, you get one of these cards that have the strands like double the width of the other ones, because normal hair, natural hair, is not really like that. We have a bit of variation. Every now and then you find the odd strand of hair that is thicker than the rest, but generally we have pretty even strands. So I try to maintain that. And yeah, I kept the different types of densities, and I knew that these need to stack on those and these on top of these, and then I've got the flyaway ones. This wiggly one was meant for the dreadlocks, to give the edge of them there.
Yeah.
Like those.
Yeah. It's like your outer layer for the dreadlocks there.
Yeah. And this was the final sheet. This is the end. This is what I ended up with. And you can see I've removed that. I didn't actually use the previous version for the dreadlock here. I didn't use it. So I just added more flyaways.
So the thing on the far right top there is the dreadlock, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's on the cylinder of the dreadlock.
Does that repeat at all, or do you just stretch that whole texture from root to tip?
No, it just stretches.
Okay.
But it's not really visible, so it doesn't matter much because it's covered by the other cards. But it's just there. It's mostly there. I used it so that it gives so that you don't see through the dreadlock, and so that there's something in between those cards that are on top of it.
Right.
Because if I go really, really close, you see there's noise underneath.
Yeah, okay.
But when you look at the whole face, it doesn't really matter.
So how do we create the texture then?
I will open a scene. I have a few of them. Do you want me to open all of them as they progressed, or just the last one?
It's your call. Whatever you think is the most informative, but also relatively conscious of time, because I don't want to keep you waiting forever. Well, waiting. Speaking here. Time is passing by already quite a lot, but it's so interesting. So I'm like, no. Anyway.
Right. So this was towards the start, as we saw it on the alpha before, and these were the cards. And for this, I use XGen Interactive because it's pretty stable. It crashes once in a while, but it's pretty stable, and it's easy to pick up and work with. And they've got a few modifiers, and yeah, this was the first set.
We obviously won't be able to do a full example of that. Time-wise, it doesn't really fit, but is there a way where in like 5 minutes you could kind of just whip out one of these very quickly so that people can kind of see at least what are like the major kind of steps involved in creating one of these?
Yeah. So you need to have a growth plane and then generate interactive groom splines. Give it a name. I'll just leave it as it is now.
Okay.
And then we can change it later anyway. So that creates the hair. And then here, I've got the modifiers of it. This is the main one. Let me go to front view and hide the grid.
I like that your plane is both curved and angled. You're not keeping that like completely straight.
Oh yeah,
towards the ground.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, the plane where they're growing from, it needs to be a bit inclined so that when we have the hairs, they start at different levels, and this gives us variation on the root position, which is, for me at least, I find it very important, especially when there's hairlines, partings, stuff like that, because we don't want I don't like having all the roots starting in one place, because then when you zoom out, it's just a line between the skin and the hair. So I like to have this. I always try to put this into my textures.
That's cool.
Always. And the card, this is a bit curved, sort of to simulate the scalp. That's why it's a bit curved.
Okay.
And then, yeah, we've got these. The scale modifier, we can increase the length of it a bit. Then we've got the sculpt, and with this one, pick the comb brush with right click to invert the frozen effects, and you just pull them all down. Now see, they're very, very low poly. I usually start with very low poly so that I can move them easily.
Mm-hmm. Can you make them longer at all while you are grooming them like this, or is the length fixed?
Okay. Shift right click, pick the length brush, and you can make it really, really big. Invert frozen, and ta-da! They get longer. And then control click, and it makes them shorter.
Oh. This is actually very similar to fiber mesh. Yeah,
it is. You can do the textures in anything. It doesn't have to be extra. It can be fiber.
That's right.
It can be it doesn't really matter unless there's a project that has specific requirements for the source files because they want the source files. It doesn't matter.
It's not that you have to use this. It's just that this is a very common tool right now to use. But
Texturing is very popular right now. Although it's at least core, it's pretty unstable. I haven't actually used it much, so I just know that everyone complains about it. Right, got the sculpt. Then what I like to do is, so it generates the hairs by default, but because I like to have control over what I'm doing, I am actually shift right click, pick the place brush. I'm going to place a few hairs just randomly, and then go back to the source of it and take this off. So what I'm working with is what I'm placing manually. So I place them wherever I want.
So that's kind of always what happens?
This is what I do. It's a bit time consuming, so just be aware of that. It's time consuming, but I like it because I can do whatever I want with it. And I don't really rely on guides because guides imply that the hair will follow them, and that takes away a bit of the control. Obviously, when it gets complex, and guides are awesome, and like you get proper grooms using guides, and that's a bit different. But for making the textures for hair, I really like having this control and doing whatever I want with it. So I've got these hairs here. Now I'll pick the comb brush. Let's say I want it to curve a bit here, and then curve there. And then I can go back to this one, give it like 100, so it's all curved and nice. and comb it a bit more. Then maybe I want to freeze a few of them so that some of them overlap, because there you can use a texture like this. This is very simple, right? This would be for very, 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 very shampoo commercial hair, where it's all very straight and very clean and very nice. But if I want to have some hair like sort of flyaways embedded into the texture, I've frozen just that one hair, and then go back to my comb brush and invert it so that I control only that one, and then overlap it a bit, and then this hair is a bit crazier, and then it just goes over them. And then maybe I want this one, which is again going like that. Maybe I want them this one to overlap a bit at the tip.
Do you find yourself using a lot of the X-Gen modifiers, or do you find yourself only usually relying mostly on manual combing like what you're doing right now?
For the hair, I think I rely more on my own manual stuff than the modifiers.
Yeah,
That's
to me, it
just
goes back to the discussion of like procedural versus like hand doing stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I'm not saying that modifiers are wrong, because you can get some awesome stuff with them. It's like, that's how we get amazing grooms in movies and everything. So I'm not against them. It's just my preference for the texture creation on the cards.
Okay, yeah. I think it's a pretty good overview, being mindful of time. Unless there's anything else, other key considerations here you want to mention. You know, like ultimately, though, you just essentially continue this until you have whatever you have on the left there, right?
Yeah, until I get what I need. I like to taper the hairs a bit as well, because unless you had someone had a freshly cut hair, it's not going to be completely
Interesting.
straight like that and not completely cut. There is some tapering to it. Like, I haven't had a haircut in over a year now, and if I start looking at my hair, there will be some tapering to it. So I like to have some tapering to it at the end.
But you don't taper all the way down to the bottom there, right? You kind of, or
no, I don't. No. I don't go all the way, because that's a bit extreme, and it's just a bit too much, and also it can create problems with the alpha in engine.
Right. Yeah. So you stop somewhere around midway. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, and maybe something around here. Just whatever I feel looks right and looks right in engine. That's the important thing, because sometimes I come back and I edit them once I've seen the hair in engine, because everything is relevant for that, not for what I feel looks right here. And at the tip, I like to taper it as well, just a bit.
Oh,
so that it offers a bit of a, like, normally hair wouldn't have that, right? Because hair just grows out of the head and it's got its thickness. But I like to do this because I feel it adds a bit of a fall off to the hairlines, or the transition from the skin to the hair. So I feel it helps a bit, and it makes it look a bit nicer, smoother, I suppose, rather than having just this, which is a bit like wires.
It's a bit harsh. Yeah. Okay.
So I like to have a bit of tapering there as well.
Cool.
And then I always use noise pretty much, and just play with the frequency so that there's a bit of variation in it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, noise is pretty popular. Then cut can be very, very useful, either with expressions or just put the noise map on it so that there's length variation on them. That one is very useful. Scale can be useful as well. If sometimes I decide that I actually want it a bit longer, but I want it to just grow all of it uniformly. If there's curls, then which one was it? The clump. I think the clump modifier is the one that gets you curls, but also you can use what I've used, I'll show you what I've used for the dreadlocks. I've actually used splines, and those get converted into guides. So hair actually grows following those splines that I had initially. Let me open that scene. So this is how I've done that texture for the dreadlocks. I've had this cylinder, which is on the UV sheet where I wanted it to be. And then I had the spline, and that one I converted into guides for the hairs. Let me freeze them so that we can see them. Yeah, so those are the guides, and then the hair grew out of these planes, following those and going around the cylinder. And then, what did I add? Some clumpiness, it seems, and then noise. And the sculpt to change the shapes. I see. And yeah, that was it. And then I baked this one onto the cylinder.
Okay. So you bake it on the cylinder. This is your baking cylinder. So you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because I do want to talk about baking, because that's essentially the next step, right? That's where we go from here. Once you're done with XGen there, then you have to bake this out, of course. But all the other hair clumps, I assume you bake them on straight planes. But this here, you have to bake it on a cylinder because it's a dreadlock.
This one I baked onto a cylinder because I needed something. I knew I wanted to use a cylinder, which means I need to have something that's tileable, but I don't want to just use noise. I want to have hair, and I want to have access to the maps for the hair. So then I thought, okay, how can I make this happen? Either I do some shenanigans in Photoshop or whatever. And then I thought, what if I try this? And what if it actually works? And this was a trial and error thing. So I tried it, and I thought, this works. And then it gets covered by cards, which sort of follow the same spiral shape.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah,
it works
out. That's
such
a good approach. Yeah, and like it makes it so that you don't have to deal with a seam too, because your texture goes all the way around, right? So you don't have a seam. Like if you make a dreadlock like this, but you make it on a plane, and then afterward you wrap it on a cylinder, you'll have to deal with a seam in there somewhere. But since you're baking on a cylinder directly, then you don't have a seam to deal with afterward, I assume.
Yep.
That's
it's all continuous.
So cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. But again, it's just trial and error, and never ever, I always told everyone, don't limit to what one person tells you. It's like, do this hair like this and use these cards like this. Try something else. Might be surprised, find a better way. So always explore things. This was
always experimentation. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah. For the baking. So you can either have all those cards. Yeah. You can either have all those cards exported and then bake them onto a plane, like you were saying, either in Marmoset or Painter or Nald or Designer. There's plenty of ways. You can even do it with Arnold Utilities. Render selection to texture. That's one way as well. What I did, I rendered them with Arnold. So I have let's see if I have materials in this scene. Yeah, I have a few shaders, which is like the ID map, which is just using the utility node, which assigns a color to every strand of hair. And then I've added the node here to desaturate it, and then put it into a flat color, so it all becomes flat. And then I have a camera in the scene, which is pointed exactly at the plane. So the plane is all square there, and the camera is pointed at it, and then render it, and it's like baking it, sort of.
And your camera is set to orthographic, I assume, so that you don't have to deal with perspective in there?
Yeah. There's the camera. I think it is. I hope it is. If I forgot that, then I'm sorry. That's my bad. But the renders look all right.
Oh,
so they
it looked great. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I did. I rendered it here.
Okay.
But it can easily go out of here and just bake it elsewhere. It's pretty much the same thing. But because I wanted to stay here and not go through something else, I just did it here.
So what do you bake?
The cap.
Oh, well, I mean, do you bake the alpha, of course, which is a black and white texture? Do you bake an albedo pass? Do you bake an ID pass? That's what you were talking about?
The maps. Yeah, I usually have ambient occlusion map. Then these are pretty standard for projects, by the way. So it's ambient occlusion. There's a depth or height map, which is like the pretty much Z depth in other rendering pre-rendered stuff. And then there's the ID map, which every strand of hair has a different value. Usually it's black and white. And then there's the root map, which is again black and white. The roots are black, the tips are white, and there's a transition between them. Let me just open the textures actually. So these were the cards rendered.
Mm-hmm. So that's the alpha texture, of course.
This is the ambient.
Is that? Oh, okay. Yeah. Ambient occlusion texture. Okay.
Yeah. Then there's this is the alpha.
Mm-hmm.
The depth. So this is where the position of the strands coming from the plane. So if the plane was here, and the ones that are at the front get whiter, and the ones that go towards the back are a bit darker. So that's how you get the.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So that one is darker there at the back because it is behind the ones at the front.
Right.
And you can play with the values of this so that there's more contrast to them. Then there's the flow map, which directs the specular of the hair. And again, it's one color towards the roots and one color towards the tips. Now, these are pretty straight, so there's not much variation, but you can see it here where it goes the other way. It turns towards blue.
Is that something that you can bake in like everything though, or is that really only Arnold that will give you that? Is it harder to get that out of other baking softwares? You know, because we are talking about the fact that we can bake in like anything, but at the same time, like if you rely on this later on, I don't know whether you do or not, but if you rely on this later on for like special effects within the game, then I assume that the choice of baker becomes very important.
Yeah, the flow map is the weird one because I haven't really found an easy way to do it, to bake it in other programs, but I haven't explored everything, so I might just be missing something. I'm sure I'm missing things. There's things I don't know, but can do it in Arnold.
Do you use it later on?
The flow map, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I used for this one to generate the colors is the Shuma shader, which I don't remember the guy's name, but he shared it it's on the Marmoset website, and he shared the Arnold shader, so people can just use it, and that's the one that I've used here.
To bake the flow map then?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this one. So it's got these nodes here, which are generating the colors, and then this gets assigned to the hair, and it just gives it those colors to direct the specular.
What do those colors represent? The direction of the surface?
Because
then it's almost like a normal map. Or am I getting that wrong?
It is like a normal map. It's like a normal map pretty much without the depth of it. So without the blue channel.
Okay.
So you get the direction on up, down, and left, right. And that's how the engine will know to direct the specular on the hair in this case. So it will follow the pattern of the color. So go from... I think Andreea is based on green, so it goes from green to I think it's orange. There is an image. I don't have it right here, and I probably shouldn't spend time searching for it. But it's basically, it's like damn it! I need to find it to show you. Hold on.
Okay. No. Yeah. Go for it. And if I can ask you a question while you're doing that, I know that sometimes that kind of bothers me. Like I'm concentrated on something. Don't ask me a question at the same time. But when you are baking, are you baking are your hair individual planes, or are there little cylinders each?
XGen doesn't do cylinders; it just does planes. But when converted from XGen to geometry, it can add a mid segment along the length of the hair, so it gives it a bit of depth, sort of like half a cylinder or part of a cylinder. So it has a bit of curvature to it.
What do you prefer?
I would like to have cylinders, but it doesn't do cylinders. So this works just fine. As long as there's a bit of volume to it. It worked fine. The textures worked fine. They beg fine. They render fine. But cylinders are the nicest because you get the whole object and you get nice ambient occlusion based on the whole volume.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm just wondering if that doesn't fuck up your flow map then. Because your flow map may depend on those being planes.
Yeah, I don't think it does because it's based on the direction from the root to the tip and in space. Let me just find it. I think flow maps were used, for example, in games to have flowing water, for example. Because it's got the flow map, and if let's say there's a river here from this corner, top left corner going to the bottom right corner, and it needs to flow that way, then if the colors are correct and to the engine, how it's calculated, let's say this one is green and this one is black. So then it knows that whatever is on the texture going from green to black, it will flow in that direction.
Yeah. Green would be your Y usually, right? Red would be your X. So if it's red, then it's pointing left. If it's not red, then it's pointing right. If it's green, it's pointing up. If it's not green, it's pointing down.
Look, I found an image.
Yeah, so you'd have yellow, which is red and green, top left. Makes sense. Bottom right, black.
This was for Unreal, and this is for Unity, so they're inverted. But that's how it is.
Yeah. Because like I can't imagine. So that shader, which is the Shuma shader for Arnold. I mean, that seems wonderful. That seems to really do the job. But I can't imagine someone, as opposed to if someone is not baking in there. You know, like ZBrush has a normal shader. You know, like you could bake your planes in ZBrush if you wanted to, or your hair. Because there is a normal shader in there. You just throw the shader on your hair cards, and it's going to spit out a normal map.
And then you take out the blue channel, and you
get exactly. Yeah, you get rid of the blue channel, and you wind up having pretty much what you've shown us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I actually haven't tried that. I need to try that. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. That's good, and then you can give some depth to the strands of hair as well. While there, you can just extrude them and have them have a circular shape.
Yeah, I'm still concerned that that's going to fuck up your flow map, though. I kind of like that they're plain. Like, personally speaking, I kind of like that they're planes because your flow map is so much more easy to get out of that. But I mean, we're really going deep in the rabbit hole right now with flow maps. But this is kind of all the interesting stuff. Anyway, we should probably come back to what we're saying.
Are a bit,
they're very weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a mindfuck. For those who don't know, these actually just like direct the specular when you have an anisotropic specular, so that the anisotropic specular flows in a particular direction. That's what it does. I mean, in the case of water, it does something else too, but in this particular case, that's what it would do, right? It's to control the specularity of the hair.
Yeah, that's what it does. And I found that it can interfere with when you're projecting normals from another mesh. So you've got the hair, let's say we've got my hair here, and I make a spherical shape on top of it, and I project what is it? This is the vertex information of everything projecting into the hair. And then it won't follow because right now the specular is going over the clumps of hair. They're following the hair. But if I project a sphere onto this, it will just go uniformly as the specular would move on the sphere.
Mm-hmm.
But it can interfere with the flow map, at least in Marmoset. If I try it out there, and I found that it can create really, really bad results. So I don't project normals from one mesh to another because of that.
Yeah, that's a very common technique that people use. I've seen that used on Uncharted 4. It made sense in the case of Nadine there. You probably remember that because there were like all these like crazy hair that was like so like going in so many different directions that if you didn't have that, I assume the specular would have been completely fucked up. But I agree with you that in general, like if you project normals, you will also likely kind of get a specular that maybe maybe a bit less interesting. Anyway, maybe this is something we could talk about at a later. I'll have to invite you again because we're going in all these kind of interesting directions of things to talk about there.
I found just this one thing I'm going to say. I found the projection of stuff of normals like that to be more useful on low tricount hairs like 5K or even 4K triangles, because then everything is very polygonal and you don't have enough budget to create nice shapes. So then projecting the normals kind of smooths out everything.
Yeah, it does. As it does in this particular case, you know, like for people who don't know what we're talking about here, there are videos where they had recorded their process of projecting. But the idea in this case is that you wind up having a hair that looks almost like a cylinder. So what it is that it, or rather like a sphere. So what it is that it kind of created an actual sphere in there, if I'm not mistaken. And they just projected the normals of the sphere onto the hair so that the planes would wind up having the normals of the sphere as opposed to the normals that the planes of the hair you had, you know, and the advantage of that is that it makes it easier to hide interpenetrations that could, in other cases, kind of be kind of ugly, which they kind of had to do in this particular case. But the drawback to that is what we are looking at right now, which is that you wind up having a bit of a Fresnel effect around the whole hair. You know, it's kind of almost how the specular is. But there isn't much specular on this particular haircut right now either. Probably also owing to the fact that the normal is very averaged, I suppose, you know. So you wind up having like the hair, like the way that the light reacts with the hair, it's very diffuse. It's very consistent, and that's the result of the projection that they have done. Or at least that's one of the results. I mean, this is a PS4 haircut too, and this was done a long time ago, so let's give them a pass. They did obviously a really, really awesome job with this, and when this came out, this was extremely impressive there, you know. But, you know, it does show the progress, I suppose, in techniques that we use to create hair.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so baking. Yeah, so you get all of your textures out. So you get flow map, you get alpha, you get ambient occlusion, you get a Z-depth pass out of that. What else do you bake?
This is the ID map or value map. They are the same thing. Sometimes different companies refer to them as different names, but they are the same thing. So this is the value where each strand has a kind of a different value to it, so that we can have variation in the shader on the hair, so that there are not all of them exactly the same value, the same color. So it brings a bit of breakdown in the shader, and it can affect the specular a bit as well. So it's nice.
And what is that? Is it like every hair winds up having a different value from black to white? Is that the idea, or like a random value, or is there a logic behind that?
I think it's just assigned black to white. I will show you how I've done it for the cap, for example, because you can use a map for it with a few values for it to assign it. But you just want to have a bit of variation in these so that they're not all the same.
Okay.
Because if I go into Unreal here and I open the shader, and we've got this random value variation. Let me zoom in on it. See?
Ah, interesting. Oh, yeah, okay. You can see it used there. So you've plugged that texture in the shader directly? Have you modified it at all?
No, I just brought the hair shader here. This is the one that came with digital humans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the one that Epic gives away just for free.
Yeah.
So I just plugged in the maps and I tweaked the shaders so that I get what I want.
So in the textures here, I can see alpha, I can see depth, I can see diffuse, which are solid colors. flow map texture, root texture, which I don't think we've talked about so far. And then unique hair value, which is the one we're talking about right now.
This is the ID, yeah.
Okay. What's the root texture?
This one.
Ah, okay, so it's a texture that defines root tip.
Yeah, it's just a gradient along the length of the hair.
Okay.
Black to white. And that's it. And some engines might use a diffuse map, some might not use it. It's just up to the engine, really, and what the company preference is. In this case, I just have a gray map, and I just gave it different values depending on these meshes and densities that I have. So the densest one is the darkest one. And then I've got the flyaways, which are closer to white. So that when I stack them together, kind of reinforce that idea of different levels and depth. And
all right.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we bake all that data out. What happens after baking?
Then I go to the cap creation. So you need to create the cap. And
do you always have a cap? Or is this only for particular haircuts?
It depends on the project. Some projects have caps, some don't like them and just use the cards. So it really depends on the project, but it helps the cards basically. And especially if there's short hair like we have on one side, the shaved hair on this girl's side, it doesn't even have cards. It's just the cap. Okay, so I'm gonna open this one. So on this one, I always block in the direction of the hair, and where is it? This is the cap that I've got. It's the same as the cards, but the cap gets generated onto a scalp mesh, which is usually just a part of the scalp on the head. So just detach from it. And then with that selected, like we had the growth plane for the cards, this is the equivalent of that. So then we grow the hair on it. And then the same as before, if there's guides, good. If there's no guides, look, this one had guides, for example. I've had guides on this one. And then let me switch these off. So I've got the guides. And I've established the flow of the hair. Then put some noise on it to move the tips outwards a bit. Then I have a scale modifier which makes it shorter or longer, but in this case I use the mask for it so that I get this gradient at the back. Then a bit of clumpiness, then a bit more clumpiness, then a bit of noise, and ta-da! I've got the cap.
Yeah, okay. So this particular haircut that you have created has short hair. So in this case, I understand the purpose of making a hair cap. Let's say that you have a character that has long hair.
Yeah.
So regardless of what a project wants, what do you feel is appropriate? To have a cap or not to have a cap?
I kind of like having caps because it just helps fill in the gaps between the cards. Because sometimes, depending on the environment and the lights and how the hair is animated, it can create gaps between them, and you don't want to see bald spots. The cards should be placed all over the scalp. So if there's a hair that has a parting in the middle and it's long hair, the cards should start all over the scalp. So you don't have all the cards here and then nothing here. So they should start all over. But there's still that chance that somehow it moves around and it reveals something, or on the hairlines. If you don't have, enough time, tri-count budget, or whatever to take care of the hairlines enough, the cap can help with the transitions between the skin and the card. So I like caps. I like them. I like using them.
And this, of course,
support the cards.
Yeah, like you've mentioned the idea of physics, right? If there's physics on a hair, you don't fully control how the hair is going to open up and part, and you may reveal part of the scalp at some point. But if you create a cap like this, even if you have someone who has long hair, then you make it so that even if there is parting of the hair that you can't quite control, you're not going to wind up seeing like a white spot, which is like the scalp there. There's always something visibly there that will look like hair.
Yeah. But most of the time, if the hair is long, I don't worry too much about the area that's covered by cards. So it will still have a nice flow, but I don't spend time detailing on or doing something specific with it because it gets covered anyway. But I do worry about the hairlines. The hairlines are the ones that are visible. So if I'm going to spend time on something, it will be the hairlines.
Okay. Okay. So you do this and then you bake it out, of course?
Yeah, this was the block out, and then I needed to do the masks for the final one.
Because you have part of it that's been shaved off.
Yeah. And the masks, I started them in Maya. And then, because in Maya, when you paint them while you're doing the X-Gen, you have access to brushes to paint the masks, but it doesn't have nice gradients. So once I had the masks in place, I made nicer fall-offs here. For example, for the length of hair from here to here, I made them a bit nicer in Photoshop and in Painter so that they can be a bit nicer than the rough. Especially here, I wanted a nice transition here because the hair is not as dense here as it is here.
It's such a great detail there, yeah. It's like the fact that there's this very slight loss of density as you like reach the hairline there. It's so cool that you done that.
I added this as well to get a bit closer and just a few strands of hair, but then sorry, I didn't bake it because I felt like this. I didn't like this empty line here, which was continuing this, but I didn't want to stop it either. So I felt it looked a bit weird. So I hate it and I didn't bake it.
Yeah. But you know, like, that's something that we don't always kind of think about, right? It's like when you look at people's hairline, it kind of strikes me when I'm watching like people in whichever context, you know, like, and you look at their actual hairline, especially when they have short hair, you can see how uneven and jagged sometimes that border is. You know, like you'll wind up around the hairline with spots where there's just a little bit sparser like spots around the hairline itself as you go around. You know, like it's not like this uniform density of hair all the way around the hairline. It's a very jagged thing, and then there's spots that's just a bit denser in hair, and spots that's a bit sparser. You know, like what you've done there, it almost looks like she had a natural kind of sparsity in her hair, and she kind of just decided to just shave a line that kind of started from there to kind of build it, like take advantage of it almost. Anyway, like I'm probably reading too much into this, but like I kind of like that sort of naturalness that you have, or that naturalisticness, I suppose, that it also kind of creates.
I didn't actually. It wasn't something that I specifically did. It just happened, and I thought, that works. I like that. And this here, you see, there's a little bald spot there. That I could have fixed that. That's just an error. But then I thought, I have some areas that don't have as many hairs as somewhere else, like here somewhere. So I just left it there, and here as well. And I think there was one around here as well.
I think it's great. Yeah. I think it actually has a lot of.
So yeah, those were errors that I left them in.
They're not errors; they're happy accidents. That's what they are.
Yes, they are.
Cool. All right. So, can we see the texture for the hair cap?
Yes. These I baked. The flow map I baked in Arnold with the utilities because I needed just like on the cards, because I couldn't get it out of here to bake it somewhere else. I haven't found a way. So yeah, that one I baked here. The rest of them I baked them in Designer in the end. On one of the in one of the intermediary ones I did them in Marmoset, but Marmoset creates some weird errors. I don't know why. I couldn't figure out why it's green. It's like sort of like it's baking the back face, but it's even with the cage, they're still there. So I don't understand exactly what's creating them. So I end up baking them all in Substance Designer, and they're pretty clean and nice. So I like them. Let me find them.
People know that I like to bake in Substance Tools, but somehow every time I talk about that, people are like, "But Marmoset." It's like, oh, and here you are talking shit about the Marmoset baker. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, look, I baked.
She's in the same camp as I am. I shouldn't do that. I'm like gonna cleave the audience watching this. That's a really terrible thing. Marmoset is awesome. All right, guys. I don't want to shit on that. Like, I actually really love that software.
Yeah, it's nice. I like it too. It's easy to pick up, and you want to do something, you just quickly go to Marmoset and do it. It's there. It's
great.
a hand.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so it was mostly for the ID and the root, but I didn't end up using them. So then these are the maps that I got out of Designer. See how nice and crisp it is?
Yeah,
It's just all crispy and clean.
So we wind up having 2 texture sets in the end for the hair. You have the texture set for all of the hair cards, and you wind up having a texture set for the cap.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's the same maps. This is the ambient occlusion. It has a bit of padding on it, so the fact that there's white on the edges, it doesn't really matter because it has padding on the hairs, so it's all right.
It looks like you've turned on diffusion in there too.
Oh yeah, I think I had it on. To be fair, I only started using Designer. I think it was like a couple months ago or 3 months ago. And I just followed some tutorials. Like, oh, this is cool because you see all of these materials.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward
to
your classes about it. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, we're gonna go deep in there.
Oh yeah.
Oh, very deep. Like the actual deepest that you can go in there. Like we'll be using it like almost like programmers.
Nice. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, this is the height map. I got these things because of the low poly, because of how low poly the cap is.
What do you use the height map for?
The Andreea shader.
Parallax or?
It's hold on.
Because you could use it that way. You could use it to create parallax occlusion map.
Yeah, I suppose you could. Yeah.
Kind of effect.
The pixel depth effect is based on the maps, and I think it's going from black to white, which the depth would have the darker values. That's particularly useful. It's not really useful on this cap, but on the hair, if there's only cards and you use that, it kind of softens up the roots of the cards. Let me try it out there, because it should be a bit more visible, and I'll hide the cap. So the pixel depth. See?
Oh, that's so cool.
It just softens up everything.
What does it do? Like it hides pixels based on their depth, essentially? Or does
I think it affects the alpha based on it's not just the depth, it's the root as well, because the root is the darkest one there, right? So then I think it's because of the how dark things are, and then it prioritizes them. And because the depth would have that information in it, because when cards start disappearing around here, they are kind of based on depth. I need to read more about this, but this is my understanding of it right now.
Yeah. It's a shader trick, essentially, right? It's obviously not moving the geometry around.
No.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's getting rid of vertices. But it does more than that, though, because it does also soften your hairs. Your hairs seem to get thinner as you play around with that pixel depth.
Yeah, I think it's affecting the alpha.
That's interesting. That's so cool. I don't know enough about this. I need to learn more about this. That's so cool. That's a great thing. So this is essentially your height map that's plugged in there. And then you just play with the pixel depth faucet until you get something that you like.
Yep.
Okay.
But the pixel depth is based on the other maps as well. It's not just the depth. It's all of them working together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I need to read more about this. Don't want to say something that's wrong.
So cool. Okay.
Right.
I see.
I baked the
I see
normal
time
map.
move on.
What?
Yeah, I
Oh,
see
okay.
time move on. So I mean, I'm fine. We can talk about this for the next like for the next day if you want. But I want to be mindful of your time, so I want to kind of move on to the plane placement and creation.
I just saw
But
you
if
the
you,
route map. Look how cool it is.
oh,
Okay.
that's so cool. Yeah, it looks so good. You could create like
Yeah.
stylized game effects with this easily. Yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Next thing. Working with the hair cards. Okay. I'm gonna open another scene here.
So we have all our textures at this point. We have created the cap. We have baked out our textures. We're ready to start placing the individual planes over the hair, over the head. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So, this is one of the initial scenes that I have to block out the hair. So, I brought my. Oh, hold on. Let me switch to Maya Classic. So I have. See, I brought the sculpt. It was from the other head, so it doesn't match perfectly. But I didn't bother to bring the correct one in because I just need the volume of the hair as a guide.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I started blocking stuff in, and this. Look how chunky. I always start with chunky
Super
cards.
chunky. Yeah.
It didn't end up like this, but this is what I start with because it's easy to block something out.
Okay. And you
And
place these manually? Do you place these? I can see there's subdivision on there. What's the approach to placing these?
Yeah, I place them manually. So if I take, you see, it's just the geometry, and if I press 3, it's got smooth on, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
okay.
if I want to edit it, just go into the edge mode. I said shortcut for it because I like my hotkeys, but it can go edge mode like this, and then start moving stuff around and editing things. I want to change the volume, then maybe I want this one to go at the back and rotate it. It's really, really rough at the start. I really don't spend a lot of time moving every card. I want something, and then once I'm happy with and always zoom out as well, and look. Don't just. At least at the start, I've noticed some beginners tend to do this. They just stay really zoomed in, and then when zooming out, it can look off. So always zoom out, look from every direction. On hair, because it's so organic, we don't really like having straight lines on it unless it's a specific haircut that's very straight. Otherwise, just a tiny bit of curvature to it makes it look a bit more natural, I suppose, and less rigid. So yeah, this is how I start the blockout. Just chunky cards with the where is it? There we go. The UV. Yeah, there we go. So I always have this one open on the other screen so that I can see which textures I'm using because I'm reassigning textures all the time. Or if I'm not happy with the tips here, then select edges and I can just move it on the UV.
Oh, so cool. Yeah. Because you're not really limited to. It's like it's all stretching anyway, so you may as well take. And if some of those transverse loop move up and down, it doesn't really visually change much. So you may as well kind of do what you're doing there. And just take them into UVs. You just move them up and down a little bit to kind of break it up. That's so cool. That's a great tip. I've never thought about doing anything like that. That's so cool.
This is particularly useful on a project that I don't have to do the textures. The textures are given to me, and I always prefer to do my own textures because sometimes they're just blocks of hair, like sort of like this one. Then they all end in the same place, and there's no gaps in between them. So being able to do this helps me get a bit of fall off at the end. So there's a bit of transition, and I don't end up with just hair ending like this, unless it's a style that requires that.
So you place these, and you start with very, very big planes like these. You place these manually. You don't necessarily use curve tools. I suppose you could, but you may as well just hand move the vertices because there's so few of them. So I guess you go from very, very chunky things, and then what's the process then? Do you gradually go for smaller and smaller planes? Do you take the big planes that you have? Do you split them into multiple planes? What's the approach there?
I'll show you. Just I'm going to mention this. This is very popular and people are using it. And all the cards are controlled by a spline. There's a spline through the middle of this card, and that's how you control them. But what I don't like about spline control is that if I want to rotate part of the card, now I just do this and it's done, it's rotated. But if I want to do it through this, currently I have to go through a graph and do it there, and I don't like moving my mouse out of my working area. So that's why I don't use this, and I just do it manually. So
and what's the name of that, by the way? Sorry, because I don't think we can quite see it. Is that Curve Tools? Is that what it is?
Yeah, GS Curves tool. I think the guy's name is George Stanislav or so. He is really nice, and he has a Discord server, and he's always replying to people and always improving and updating this tool. So this is really, really cool. It's really nice for dreadlocks, for braids, for even if you want to do belts or whatever. So this is a very nice tool he's doing. And he's got it for sale on ArtStation. It's not even expensive. It's only a few dollars if I remember correctly. So it's a really nice tool to start messing around with. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so got this one. Let me duplicate this, move it on the other side. Put my pivot there so I can rotate it. So let's say I've got hair on this other side, right? I'm going to delete some edges so that it's not as long. And then I'm going to move this one. And I'm going to delete this one. So I've got this block out here with the hair starting here at the top. Oh, by the way, there's a script that I use to have the head, to use the head as a live surface and to be able to switch it on and off. I don't know who made this script. I found it on an old Polycount thread, and it's pretty cool because I set the shortcut for it and I can just switch it on and off.
Wait, I'm sorry, to do what exactly? To move the pivot?
Oh, I have the head as a live surface, so whenever I move something...
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I always use it for the root of the cards.
Okay.
And then switch it off when I'm here. Have it a bit... I usually have the hair go a bit upwards because unless it's wet and it's very tight or it's very thin hair, it will go a bit upwards on the partings. Not much, but it will have because the direction of the hair is a bit upwards. So I try to have that. And let's say she's got hair here. And it's a bit curved there. Then I can insert an edge here. Oops, sorry. Okay, so we've got this one here. Try to keep the edges about the same size so that the geometry doesn't deform too much, because that can create bad texture deformations, and those are never nice. Okay, so I've got this base here. Now I need to cover it up with the other cards. So for in-game hair, it's a good idea to have a sort of a triangle between the cards. So if I just do this and assign different texture to them, if the cards, especially if they don't have this mid segment, can look good from here, but they go here and where's the hair? So that's really, that's not nice. So it's a good idea to have this sort of triangle.
But you were also talking about the fact that you had that that edge loop running all the way down the middle of the hair card, right? That's also very important to that.
Yeah. Sometimes I use that. Sometimes I don't, depending on the try count budget. Because if I use that long one, that basically doubles the try count on the card.
Right.
And sometimes on some projects that might not be possible.
Right.
So we've got this one here, and I just pick it from the UV and assign a different texture to it. If I click this here, I can see it a bit. And then I see the card underneath through this one. And then again, I duplicate this one to create the other side of the triangle. And so that it's not repetitive, I might pick another card. And again, I might move the edges. If I see that something looks too noisy here, I might move it down and then a bit up so that it stretches a bit. So just move them around. As I go through the cards higher on the using these different textures that have less and less density to them, I move the roots a bit further away as well so that they make a nice transition. And now the hair will be visible from every direction.
There's a nice 3D-ness to it now.
Yeah, and if I put the mid segment back into the one underneath, move it outwards a bit, make sure there's no nasty intersections, so be careful about that. And ta-da! We got hair.
That's so cool.
And then sometimes I could put some, these are called blades, which are exactly like 90 degrees going into the... These are nice because they fill in some gaps as well where they are not needed and they are part of the clump of hair. But they always have to follow the direction of the hair, so I need to follow the flow of the clump that it is part of. So it needs to follow, otherwise these intersections become visible. So if I do this, that one there...
I was going to ask about that,
Yeah, that's nasty. So if I'm going to use this, they need to follow what's underneath, because then it's just all hairs going in the same direction and it's not visible. So you need to be very careful about what's visible. Yeah, and that's a very, very rough clump of hair.
That's so
and
cool.
Then you can make another, I don't know, let's duplicate this one. Move it on top of everything. Now I'm doing this very, 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 very rough and not pretty. But when they are clean, I clean them up and they look nice. And now I need to give this one of these textures that are completely see-through, just to detail everything.
So I know that right now we are doing one clump from beginning to end, essentially, but when you're doing a haircut and you're not under pressure because you are recorded like this, what approach do you prefer? Do you do like all of those primary planes first? Do you place all those really big planes first everywhere? And then afterward you kind of go through the detail levels like that? Or do you kind of work one little section at a time? You do the primary details, you add the more breakdown planes on top of that, you add the wispy planes on top of that. Like, do you go like clump by clump like that from beginning to end, or do you like do passes over your haircut, like all the primary planes first and all the secondary planes first and all the tertiary planes first?
I think it's a mixture of both, because I definitely have these huge cards to establish pretty much what we have in Unreal with the base layer, which is like the block out. When I hide these, so this is very close to the block out that I had, because once I have these chunky ones, it's just like making a sculpt in ZBrush and you have just a few polys to define the overall volume, right? And then I break this one into smaller chunks. So I might actually split this one into 2 cards. And then, just like I did here, I keep on duplicating cards. I always duplicate cards everywhere and just realign them and reassign textures and move them about. So I constantly do that. But if I see there's 2 cards, like here, I've got this one. I think I split this one into 2 cards in the end. So if I see that this would be a clump of hair, this would be a clump of hair, and they're pretty similar, I will duplicate this one and put it here as well, but I will edit it. So they are not the same. If I duplicate the clump of hair like that and place it elsewhere, most likely I will edit the shape of it. I might reassign textures, so it's not the same. Because I know there's some people who prefer to make different clumps of hair that are straight and then they just place them all over the head. Personally, I prefer to have them to create them on the head, because then they already follow the curvature of the head. But it all depends on the hairstyle, and this is just my preference. That I put them on the head. But if I have a clump like this is a clump that I like, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to use this one elsewhere on the head and edit it so that it's easy to select later on, I usually duplicate it and move it outside the head so that I can select it easily. And I always have groups of cards. Now this is the blockout, so there's not many groups in here, but I always encourage everyone to keep their scenes clean, to name stuff. I always have groups for I'll open another scene that's a bit further along, but I have a group for the fringe, for braids, then group for the back hair, for the hair underneath. I always keep it into groups and organize so that if I need to change anything, it's easy to select. I just find them there. I don't like scrolling through plane 37 and plane 47.
Yeah, okay. So what happened? So right now, those planes you have placed, they have subdivision on right now. I assume that in the end, I mean, obviously you don't use that. You turn that off and then you manually add the edge loops that you are missing. Do you convert subdivision to low-res geometry? Like, how do you go from this to a final kind of low-res clump of hair?
Yeah, convert it into geometry.
Okay.
But this will be very high, and then just use the Maya reduce, which usually does a pretty good job. If I run this again, but every once in a while, see, it does this. It doesn't assign them correctly, so then I just go clean it up a bit and add some extra edges there so that it's all clean. This is at the end, but when I test stuff in Unreal, I usually keep it with the Maya reduce stuff. So when it was smooth, or was it modify, convert, smooth mesh preview to polygons, and then to reduce it, it's mesh, reduce, and get the percentage.
Okay.
So at the end of it, it needs a bit of cleanup. The good thing about that hair tool, about this one, is that it has a slider, so you select the edges and it just assigns them correctly wherever they need to be. So that's what's really, really nice about this. You don't need to do any cleanup at the end because you have control over it. But the rotation thing puts me off on it.
All right, okay. This is a very comprehensive overview of everything from beginning to end so far. I guess the only thing we haven't really talked about so far is more like engine and stuff. Although we did talk about that quite a little bit about shader and workflow or flow map and stuff like that. To be mindful of your time here, maybe we can spend 5 minutes on this and then let's take a break.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else essential that you wanted to talk about as far as plane placement is concerned. But for me, like, you know, the way I've always understood plane placement for this is just elbow grease, really. You just have to go in there and just have to place them like manually one on top of each other. And it takes, you know, sometimes it can take days to place these. I assume you're quite quick with these right now. But for me, like, my experience is that you may spend a few days very carefully placing these planes and overlaying these
Oh
planes.
yeah, definitely. Let me open the final scene actually. So this is still with the smooth on. It's not the cleaned up, reduced version. But yeah, at the start it's very rough, but then as I progress, I'm more and more careful about the cards and what how I place them and where they are. And yeah, so this is the final one. And see, I've got all of these groups to control, but I'm using a different diffuse texture in the viewport as well, so that I can see the different types of cards that I'm using, and to see how sort of the depth that I'm gonna get in engine. So I like to preview that while I'm working, because then I get a better idea of what I will get in engine, and it's all more visual for me. But yeah, this is yeah. This is yeah. It's you need to place them. It's just this one is probably a duplicate of the card underneath, and with a different texture assigned to it, and moved a bit to the side. And this is a duplicate of the one underneath. And again, the flow of the one underneath, the shape of it is just straight like this. But this one, I moved a bit to the side because I was thinking, well, this person is moving and the hair is sliding, so these strands of hair are a bit more to the right than the other one, so just a bit shifted. Same with this one here. So yeah, the more it gets towards the exterior, the more careful I am about everything, and sometimes I go back and retouch what's underneath everything. But yeah, I didn't encounter something that automates these things enough.
I don't think
There's
there is.
always
It's all
there's
over
always a
recently.
downside. Yep.
Yeah, it's like when you use these procedural tools to place planes, it's like always like, oh yeah, but I wish this was a little bit off on the side, and you always wind up like going back to like manually like moving stuff around. And yeah, like haircuts are it's all very you just have to give it time, like I think that, but like also kind of approaching it in this kind of approach of you have those really dense planes, and then you have levels of sparseness that you add on top of that, and really just placing them one after the other there, or just, I mean, there is for sure an organic process there where you go through the different steps. Like, you're not like probably cleanly like, okay, I'll finish the densest plane and then I'll never touch them again, and then I'll move on to the next level of detail. There's like always kind of a bit of a flow in between these different levels of details. But I think that for me, that's really key, because you can really see the kind of impact that kind of approach has here. Because a lot of people sometimes, like, you'll see they'll do haircuts, but they'll only like almost do only the densest planes, but they won't really think of sparser planes that they have to add on top of that. And then the hair looks very CG, like it looks very, like all the clumps. The end result is that all the clumps, they all look very cleanly separated, of course. Like that, for me, that's really the key. That's really the key to really making this a really great haircut. Is really that, I mean, there are multiple keys here, but it's really that thinking of, you go from the densest planes and you have those level of details that you slowly build on top of that. That really gives this a very naturalistic, organic look in the end.
Yeah. On this one, I think most cards on this were actually placed individually. I didn't use many groups on this. I think I made some groups here. Like, see how you can see the densest card here, and it has some cards on top of it. So I think this one I used as a group, and I duplicated it here and assigned different textures and then change it. Because if you look at this, you can see the how choppy it is. And if I remember correctly, these were groups that I duplicated and I edited the shape of them and reassigned textures. But across this, I didn't really use groups of cards. I had the densest ones and I kept on duplicating like I did before and just moving them around and then zoom out, see how it reads, take it in engine, check it out, come back, edit, build on top of it, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to have areas where the hair is see-through, because we get that.
Yeah.
Not the whole hair is super, super dense like here that you can see through it. It's okay to have hair that's see-through.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So cool. Okay, how about we take a 10-minute break?
Sure.
Unless you wanted to talk quickly about this, but I think you're starting to lose your voice there a little bit. I think it would be good for all of us to have a bit of a small break there.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm surprised I held out so long because I usually start talking.
You're so passionate about this. I think that's what keeps you going so long. Super, super good. Okay, guys. Honestly, I kind of regret. I'll be like, if I'm straight with all of you, I probably should have kept an eye on the audience chat during the time that we were speaking. I was just so focused on this that I kind of totally forgot. You all may have a bunch of questions as you've been asking so far. But I guess we'll have a chance to go through them right after the break, and I'll try to pay attention next time we do these very fascinating interviews to keep an eye out on the audience chat during the time. Anyway, let's give Andreea a 10-minute break. I mean, it's the first class since we're back too, so I'm still a little bit in vacation mode, I'm afraid. I'm kind of not paying enough attention to stuff, but I will learn before next time. What do we have? What do y'all have been saying? I hope you all here having interesting questions. Of course, if you are here and you're still here and you want to ask Andreea questions, you have a chance to ask them live. You can either use a microphone for that or write them in the audience subscriber chat channel. We do have a Sunday Q&A questions channel. It hasn't been used today. That's fine. It's totally fine. I'll go through the subscriber chat then. But if you do have a particular question for Andreea for the Q&A, you can either wait until there's a gap in the conversation and just ask it live, or you can write it down in either the subscriber chat channel or the Sunday Q&A questions channel, whichever one you want. It's going to be a very organic process there. But before, let's go through the whole subscriber chat channel and see what's interesting in there. So Kenny 1245, that's a while ago. I apologize for that. You shared Johan Lidval's haircut there. Yeah, so he did mention 100K triangles in there, as you were saying. Because, I thought too that got mentioned somewhere at some point, but when we were talking at the start of the interview there, I wasn't quite sure anymore whether that got actually publicly announced somewhere. I kind of remember too that someone said something like that at some point online, but I wasn't quite sure, so I'm I'll err on the side of caution. But yeah, I think it was 200,000 triangles or something like that the original Aloy haircut had. Crazy amount.
That is crazy. It's still cool because she's got all of her braids and everything.
Yeah. Johan did just an amazing job with that haircut. Kenny, you also shared a owl picture. Oh, that's good.
Oh, yeah. That's the double swirl, yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Sushan, can we talk a little bit about hair texture creation as well? We did talk a little bit about that, but if you have more questions as far as that's concerned, I'm sure Andreea will be happy to answer them. Insert multi-measure repository, link for convenience. Thank you, Kenny. You've been working overtime today, it seems. I'll have to start paying you a salary for all these posts you're making. Nicola needed to go. I haven't spoken with you in a while. I hear you two are related. Well.
Yeah, we work together.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hey.
Hello.
I have something to ask. I wrote it down so I don't forget it.
Yeah,
it's about Unreal. Now that Unreal now has procedural haircut generation of the new grooming tools. Have you seen or experimented with that? What are your thoughts?
What's it called?
It's a procedural hair generation that Unreal now has with the new grooming system on 4.26.
No, I haven't tried that. I haven't tried it, so I can't comment. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
4.26?
Curious about it. I'll have to try it out because I'm curious.
I have a couple of questions as well.
I'll
Sure.
send the link. It's on the documentation.
All right. Let's finish Lucky's question first, and then we can go through that one right after. I'm not sure who wanted to take the question afterward. Diogo, was that you?
Yeah.
Cool. Lucky.
Can I go?
No. I want to see Lucky's link first. Let's go through that. That's a very interesting question. Okay, that's... Lucky, do you know if there's a video or anything we could look at?
For now, I've only seen the documentation, but there's a video, but it's more on the movie grooming side of the thing.
So what's the idea there? So we're talking about procedural generation. How does it work in this case?
I think it works by you importing a grooming from Alembic, like XGen grooming, and then you import into Unreal, and then in the system you can generate haircuts automatically.
Oh, so you're talking about one of these systems there. Yeah, that's been around for like a while. Like we use that on Deus Ex, like one of these spline-based system. It's true, we haven't really talked about that. It's a very interesting system. Andreea, I'm sure she's quite familiar with these kind of systems. You know, like the things like Hairworks, TressFX, Andreea, you know, these kind of systems?
Yeah, I know of them, but I don't know very, very much about it. I read about it a bit recently. I think it's pretty cool. You can get some nice results.
Yeah. They're typically, like in my experience, they're typically a lot easier to create haircuts with because you don't have to deal with the low-res plane creation and like placements there. You know, you can just go from like XGen straight to engine. Like I personally love these kind of systems. They do like there are. I'm not. They're not necessarily quality issues that I have in mind, but it does make hair that sometimes. I've seen two issues with that kind of system. I think they're all solvable. These aren't like things that are necessarily like problems that make it so that these technologies can't be used further or whatever there. But like the two issues I've seen, one of them I've seen it addressed on PS5. And the other one, not quite sure I've seen it addressed yet. The two issues, the first one with these kind of systems, you know, like if we look at, let's say, what could we bring up? You know, like Hairworks is like it's been around for like some time now. It was used in The Witcher 3 also. Hairworks, because like ultimately it's all the same thing. It's like you create a haircut using something like XGen, and then you import it as splines, and then the engine itself will modify, let's say, the size of the individual hairs and the amount of hairs based on distance, these sorts of things. The two issues I've seen with this with time was, the first one was hair shadowing, where you wouldn't necessarily in real time get all of these hairs casting shadows on each other.
Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to tweak our asset.
Now, this video is probably old, but you would have issues with hair shadowing. You wouldn't have a lot of 3D-ness within the hairs because the hairs wouldn't cast individual shadows. Now, this is obviously like a presentation video and stuff, and this is going to look fantastic, you know? So we can't appreciate that too much here, but in a lot of games that use this kind of system, you wouldn't necessarily have a lot of depth within the hair there. That was very, very obvious to me. Now, with PS5, I think it's easier to fix that because you can afford more of the performance cost that it would cost for having each individual hair in real time cast ambient occlusion, and that kind of addresses a little bit the volumetric kind of lacking that I could see there within those kind of clumps. But the second thing that I wanted to say was one of the biggest issues that I've seen too with this kind of system was physics. And especially for long hair, physics of it would be very, very complicated. And in my experience, it was really hard to get that right. Like I think I've seen it used to. It was on Wasn't Sekiro Shadows Die Twice? The little boy there, his name is, I'm not sure what the little boy name is. Like, you can see that they've kind of used something like that. Now, I'm not 100% sure that that's what they used, but it looked very similar to that. So I'm kind of thinking that they've used a technology like that. The little boy name? Kuro. Like, it's very hard to get the physics right with these kind of systems, more so than just your standard polygonal hair. Oh God. No, I'm recording and streaming publicities on YouTube. That's not very good. It's like, this is like never ending. It's like three publicities? Is there a 441? No, okay. Oof. Do we see Kuro's hair at some point here? Yeah, like, it's very floaty. You get like a lot of interpenetrations. This isn't the best image, unfortunately, the best video, but I mean, these may be hair cards, but I'm not actually 100% sure, but I've seen very, very similar effects where the hair is very, very floaty. It's kind of hard to control when you have these tress effects like simulation systems. Anyway, I love these kind of systems. I think that they're very, very fun to use. I think that they're, like, personally speaking, I think that they're the future of hair creation. But I don't think that they're necessarily going to replace hair cards like now, you know, but maybe in 5 years' time, who knows? Anyway, Andreea, do you have any thoughts on these kind of systems?
I haven't used them, so I don't really have experience with them. I just read about it and it sounded pretty cool to me. But we're definitely going to move away from cards in the future.
Yeah,
cards
I think so too, yeah.
Going to be used on mobile games and somewhere where there needs to be a lot of optimization, but we are moving away from cards.
I think so too, yeah. I think if we give it like another 5 years, I think cards will be in the minority of haircuts that we create. But as you said, like mobile haircuts and stuff, like that will very likely still use haircuts for like a while there. Yeah. I like these systems. I personally think that they're the future of hair creation. Because they are closer to VFX and they're easier to use from an artist's perspective too, you know. Anyway, it's all.
I'm curious. I hope I get
to
try that at some point because that sounds very interesting and very nice.
Yeah, thanks for answering. It was quite fun seeing you to react to all this change that's been going on in the industry too.
Awesome. Lucky. Thank you. Diogo, you're up, my friend.
Hello. First of all, thank you for your sharing all the information. My question is regarding the baking the haircut. I've seen that you told that you are baking designer or something. Why don't you bake in Maya with all the avocs? Any specific reason? Maybe you already mentioned it, but I miss it.
Oh, I just like the maps that came out of designer. They were very clean. It was just that I tried Marmoset, I tried designer, I tried in Painter as well, and the Maya render to texture thing, and I just preferred the ones from designer. I thought they looked very clean, so it was just my preference to stick to those.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Bakers are a dime a dozen these days, so it's like, you know, we all kind of gravitate towards one because we like it, but ultimately, like, everything could probably
and it's very interesting. I've never seen anyone using the interactive grooming for the cards, only for the scalp, and seeing you using it for the hair cards is very interesting. Normal people use the other system, the other accent system, with the deflection, etc. But it's a different approach. Like you said, we need to try new stuff and different approach and see if it works better for us or not. So for sure, thank you.
Yeah, always try something. If you have a bit of free time, just take those 10 minutes and try something.
Yeah, I think so too. Let me see. I had a question here from. I'm just reading through what people have been writing down. Sushan, thanks for this amazing talk. Lorraine,
thank you for joining.
Same thing. You're so humble. You keep throwing it back to people. It's like, Andreea, you've done a lot of people here a great service by being here. You deserve all the praise. Shower yourself in praise. Enjoy it.
It's so weird. It's weird. I can't get over it. It's so strange.
Sensei.
But yeah, I'm happy it was helpful. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine. Sensei, congratulations. It is beautiful and awesome. Could you indicate if Andreea has any tutorial available? Andreea, I'll let you answer that question.
I do not.
Well, she has one now.
Yeah. I was at some point I was thinking of making a breakdown, but this is the breakdown, so yeah, there you go. This is it. I don't know, I was thinking maybe I could do something for short hair since it's a bit different at some point when I have time. I don't know, considering it. But no promises.
Well, I'll definitely have to invite you back, that's for sure. Because you've been a great guest so far.
Well, such a nice
Thank you.
host. I need to match it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mating. I had to leave a few times, so in case you have missed it, we would like to ask how many softwares has Andreea tried for hair? If she did, which she would put in second place after XGen that you assume she considers to be number one?
For what I've used, it was I tried fiber mesh in ZBrush. That's pretty much, like you said, it's pretty much the same as this one. So they're very similar. And I know there's a thing called, I think it's called Fiber Shop, which is you're grooming the cards, and it's you're doing it through sliders, so it's very beginner friendly for people who are just starting out. I don't like it because it takes away my control, which I was saying that I like to control the hair however I like, and that's why I'm doing it more manually. But this, I know some people use this, and it's pretty nice. You just have less control on it, but I think it's good for beginners.
And this is a standalone program? Standalone program? Yeah, sorry. This is a standalone program?
Yeah, as far as I know, yes.
Okay. So you essentially, we're back to that idea of you use fully procedural techniques to, in a way, create that, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't actually get a license for this. I've just watched some videos, and I talked to someone who's using it. I didn't get it because I like to have my control over what I'm doing.
But
that doesn't mean that this is. It doesn't mean that this is not good. It's fast. As far as I was told, it renders the textures pretty fast, so it works out. Then there's also Coiffure for Maya and XGen, which I want to try out. I didn't have time yet, but I want to try out. I think that one's pretty good right now as well. It's XGen based, but it's making it a bit more user friendly. And again, it's baking everything in there, so it's making XGen a bit easier. That's what I understand from it, but I haven't used it yet. It's something that I want to try out.
Yeah. It's funny, right? It's like the more you're usually an expert in something, the more you rely on basic tools. As opposed to, it's like ZBrush sculpting, right? It's like, yeah, I use like the basic brushes in there and that's it. It's like I use those for almost everything that I do, It's like I have nothing against these tools, but like it feels to me like that's the normal course of things. The more you get comfortable in a particular field, the more you'll reduce your toolbox to the simplest things, because you become so good with them that you're like, well, I can create anything I want with these basic tools,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't try these tools or try them or
Oh
use
yeah,
them,
definitely
but
try. Decide
like,
what works best.
yeah, like what Andreea is saying, it's like I recognize that, the more you become good at something, the less you have a tendency to like seek new tools, but the simpler and simpler you make your own toolbox as well.
Mm. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that's something people like Coiffure.
Yeah,
And I think
cool.
we updated as well.
All right.
Sorry, you were going to say something. I interrupted you.
Oh, no. I mean, I was pretty much done. I just wanted to know if you had any thought to add on top of what I said.
No, that's bad. I agree with it. For a while, when I was learning things, I was always trying to learn a new piece of software and keep with the trends. And it's like, oh, this is cool. Now model is good for modeling. Now the other one is good for modeling. And I kept on trying to chase things and try these fancy tools that everyone was mentioning. And it's the same with hair. Just find whatever works for you and just do it, because the result matters in the end, in most cases, unless there need to be a specific approach.
Yeah. Maria, you seem to be writing a question. If anyone wants to ask any questions, feel free to take the space.
Okay, so it's me again. I want to ask Andreea about, she said that soon we'll be not using hair cards. So what are the new things we need to be aware in that sense? What, like, are the grooming tools gonna be the new standard, or there's gonna be something else?
I think grooms are gonna be a thing, aren't they? Like we saw like a preview on, I think it was on the FIFA trailer or something, where they had like proper grooms, and I think there's integration for Ornatrix into Unreal, so that could be something. But I'm not sure exactly. What do you think, Laura?
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit the same question that we've asked before. It's like, yeah, I think we are moving towards grooms. Yeah. So like back on Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, PS4, we had integrated grooms in real time on PS4. We had proven that it works. And that's even me working within the studio there and pushing for that, and having programmers come in and say, no, we can't do this. And I'm like, it has to happen. And it did. Because I just really believed in that, and I really wanted to have that for the main character of the game and for other characters as well, and we made it work, in like real time. So like there's nothing, if we could run those on PS4, albeit with the issues that I've mentioned of lack of shadows and physics that weren't necessarily that great, now that we're solidly in the PS5 time, like I fully believe that this will, now go from this experimental thing that we used to do to something that we do a lot more. Because, like, for me, the biggest thing from an artist's perspective about using a groom approach, if you will, is, and for those who that's not really clear what that means, it just means that, like what Andreea did in XGen, where, she generated strands of hair, then baked it on planes. Well, as opposed to baking things on planes, you just use those strands in real time, So if you make a short haircut, then you grow hair using XGen, using fiber mesh, and then you export that out as curves into the engine there. And the thing that the engine does is that it does usually two things for you. One is that it controls the density of hair in real time, so that when you're further away from a character, you have less hair. It kind of loads the hair automatically based on distance. And the second thing that it does is that as it loads hair out, as the camera moves away from a particular character there, the hair also becomes thicker, so that you wind up having the same kind of amount of coverage there. From an artist's perspective, the great thing about that was that it really made the turnaround on a particular haircut extremely fast, where, like on Mankind Divided, and this was PS4 days, and it was with people who were very good at haircut, but not of Andrea's caliber there necessarily. It would take about 2 weeks or so to make a particular haircut using hair cards. Whereas doing a very equivalent haircut using only a grooming approach took a few days, So we were able to cut down perhaps to like about a third the amount of time it took to do a haircut using groom. And artists simply liked it more because it's less polygon modeling and it's more just pure grooming, like you're more of a hairstylist working in 3D there. So it's very, very fun from an artist's perspective. So I can't really see too much of a drawback to it that would really stop this kind of technology from eventually taking over. It's essentially how they create hair for VFX. And we now are in a console generation where we really can't afford to have that at a broader kind of for a lot more characters, Whereas in the PS4 days, we could do it, but it was very experimental, It was also Tomb Raider that probably the first game that comes to people's mind that really used that. That kind of approach. So yeah, I think it will take over. You can never really predict the future, right? So we can never say this is exactly what's going to happen. But I think that Andrea mentioned something that is very, very true, which is that I think that yes, we will see this more and more because the advantages are so interesting. But we have to be aware of the fact that a groom-based haircut will always be a lot more expensive in terms of performance than a hair card-based one. And therefore, there will always be cases where certain cases, or at least there will be cases that would last for certainly many years to come, where you simply want the better performance of a hair card-based haircut as opposed to a groom-based haircut, It's like that idea of, every new console generation, people always think of, okay, now it's the console generation where every game will be consistently 60 FPS, And that never happens, People had that conversation on the PS3 days, PS4 days, PS5 days. It's like, no, guys, games will always be 30 FPS. It's not that the console cannot do it. It's that question of, do you want to spend that performance on that? Do you want to spend those resources on that? Because if you have a game that's 30 FPS, you will always have twice as much available performance that you can put towards something, potentially put towards having better hair as one of the things. But that kind of conversation is a conversation that every developer always has all of the time, If we spend the performance that it takes to have these real-time grooms, then that's a performance that we're taking from something else, whatever that other thing is. And so it doesn't matter whether we can have grooms. It matters whether developers want to have that performance, whether they value the characters high enough that they want to have that on the characters there. So you can imagine a game like FIFA where you always have these ultra close-up shots of characters. You want to have those grooms in there because you really want to have those beautiful close-up shots. But if you're having a third-person game where the camera is more zoomed out, if you're an indie developer, maybe you have a bit less fine-grained control over where performance goes, you may simply prefer to have hair card-based hair because it's better for performance. And you want to spend that performance towards something else that matters to you, So ultimately, I don't see, I cannot see hair cards going away anytime soon, simply because, first, a really nicely made haircut is really beautiful. So quality-wise, hair card-based hairs are still very, very satisfactory, So then it really becomes a question of, well, do we want to spend the performance on that or spend the performance on something else? And for me, that conversation is something that will be there until consoles are so quick or platforms are so fast that it doesn't even make sense to ask the question in a way, which I don't think that PS5 is necessarily that console generation. So, I think we'll simply see this console generation simply more of that sort of that mix of these two technologies just being present all of the time and developers always making that choice. I will privilege groom-based haircuts, or I will privilege haircard-based haircuts, mostly based around that performance question, and whether they want to spend that performance on that. You also have to develop internal tools also. These grooming approaches are more experimental in terms of tools. Now, Unreal is doing very large strides towards popularizing that, and that's awesome, but most AAA studios do not use Unreal. They still use their own engine there. We have to keep that in consideration. Like most big game studios, they don't use that particular engine there. They have their own that they personally use. Now that's not necessarily always a good thing. Like there's a lot of drawbacks there. And personally speaking, I like to use Unreal more than I like to use those other in-house engines, because they're usually not as artist friendly there. But this is still how it is. Most people don't want to pay those royalties there, or they have developed so many tools with time that are proprietary, that they rely upon. They don't want to give that up. So it's not as if everyone's going to give up and switch to Unreal like right now. And so for those studios, while developing tools that will allow them to use grooms is also an expense that they may not necessarily be willing to do right now, So there's all these factors that make it so that, yes, I think grooms will coexist with haircuts for, at least the next 5 years. Beyond that, it's anyone's guess what's going to happen, really. I don't think it's so, will it take over? Well, in the future, perhaps, it's hard to say at this point. But I think it is very interesting that we are in this particular moment in time when that technology is now finally usable enough that we can really spread that throughout a lot of video games. And I personally really like that, because I'm very bullish on this particular technology there.
Yeah, thanks for answering. I was asking these questions because I've been doing a lot of research on the Unreal documentation and reading about this kind of subject, and I find it really interesting. It's something that I always it's on the back of my mind. Like, are we ready to put these types of grooms on our portfolios, or do we still put these grooms on the hair cards on our portfolios? It's something like that that's been I've been pondering to myself.
Yeah, I think, Andreea, I'd like to get your take on this, but if the question is, if we reformulate your question, because if the question is, are we ready to put this in our portfolio? I think the answer is yes, absolutely. If we reformulate the question differently and we ask the question, are we ready to exclusively have that? If we are looking to be a hair specialist and we want to exclusively have grooms in our portfolio, then I would more to go towards the no in that particular case. I think you still have to show that you know how to use and create haircut-based or haircuts that are haircut-based. Now, Andreea, I'd love to get your take on that.
I think if you only focus on proper grooms, like let's say you learn Yeti or something, then you're going towards the movie industry and VFX and this other side more than games at the moment. Because I think people are starting to explore with a combination of cards and groom, like for flyaways, for example, you can have use XGen to just quickly put some flyaways on. But we're probably not there yet. So if you want to focus entirely on grooms, I think that's going towards movies at the moment.
Okay, thank you for being here, and thank you for answering all my questions and all these things that I've been thinking about it for quite some time. Thank you.
Sure.
Always a pleasure, Lucky. Diogo, hey. Yeah, go for it.
One more question. Can you make a breakdown of the thread locks and the braids? would be nice to see how you handle it. If you create like a base and then put something on top and bind or unbind using the GS curve tools. I would like to see if it would be possible to see how you handle it.
Sure.
Thank you.
So for the braid with the GS tool thing, let me see, because I haven't used this a ton. I've got the he's got tutorials on his channel on YouTube, by the way. So if you want to use it, watch the tutorials. I think it's either 2 or 3 videos, but he's explaining things very nicely and going through the whole interface and how to do things. But basically, yeah, I've got each of these parts of the braid, which is 3 of them. They are connected to a curve, and then the 3 curves, curve control window. There we go. Okay, so I've got this one, the main one, and then edit original, and they always go at the base here. So here I've got the 3 curves, which have a cylinder on them. And this is why I was saying that it's nice that you can control the subdivisions. It's the same with cards. You just do whatever you want with them, and you don't have to clean up at the end. So this is nice. That's why I used it for the braids. And then
I was thinking if you use like you prefer to use the tubes and not a curve card with the one subdivision, you know. I was thinking what was your approach. That's why I was asking you. So you use actually tubes with 4 sizes. Okay.
In this case, it's tubes. I think they've got 5 or 6 sides here. But depending on if there's a project that is lower try count, because this will increase the try count, then I can just have cards that are like this. And I usually make a straight one, like there is like this one here. And that one, that straight braid that it can be made out of cards, then that can follow a path deformer, or in my case, I just, like I said before, I just like to use bones. So whatever works really, and depending on the project as well. You just have to try it out and see what you like and the control that you like to get over what you're working on. Because this is just my preference in this case. Now, for this, what I wanted to do was to add more cards on top of it so that there's actually individual flyaways and stuff to give it more volume and more fuzziness to this, but I didn't have time for it, so this will do. But yeah, that's about it for the braids. It can be cards. It can actually be long cards. I've used that before. And then for the dreadlocks, let me close this. Let's say this one. I like to keyframe them so that I can control them. And then if I go to keyframe 1, I've got the straight one.
Oh, that's cool. You can go back and forth there easily. The keyframes are on the bones, obviously, not on the mesh.
Yeah, on the bones there.
Mm-hmm. What about skinning? Then.
Oh, it's really, really easy in Maya. Yeah. Because I used to do this in Max, and Max is not as nice as Maya. And just select the meshes, select the bone, and then rigging, skin, bind skin, and that's it. It just binds it. Where they bend, it's not. It doesn't have the best fall off, so you need to touch that a bit. Like this one is pretty sudden because the fall off on the bones. Like every bone will control a vertex. Vertices are assigned to the bone, so they have weight on them. And in this case, these are assigned to this bone and the other ones to the bone there. But if there's a fall off in between them, so the percentage, let's say each vertex has 100% weight on it, and in this case, a vertex here has 100% assignment to this bone. But if it's 50-50, then this vertex will move the position somewhere in the middle. So you can do that by painting weights. Paint skin weights, and then you get the brush and you just soften it so it looks nice. And yeah, that's it. Again, this is just my preference. This worked for me. At one point, I was doing these in Max because Max splines I prefer them to working with splines in Maya because you get the spline and then to give it a cylinder on top of it is just a more complicated process. I couldn't be bothered with it. So I just went to Max, quick splines. You can see them in viewport, bring them back here, done. So just whatever works, just try things out.
3ds Max for modeling. It's like I get endorphins just thinking about that.
I loved it. Whenever I had to switch to Maya, I was like, no, my dear sweet
I still
Mac.
love it, yeah. For me, that's still my go-to tool. It's like if I need to model something, it's like I'm going through 3ds Max. Like screw Maya, I'm not gonna model something in there. I use Maya to export. Like the dirty secret I have about Maya is that it is my exporter to an engine. Like that's what I use Maya for. I mean, unwrapping is good there too. Diogo, sorry, go for it.
Just one thing. So you did not cap the cylinder, right? How did you just taper it?
Yeah.
Okay. Just was wondering if it's like closed or not, but no. Okay.
Yeah, it's not closed because it's got all of the cards and it's tapered a bit, and the cards on top of it are kind of making it work.
Hiding the.
But there's different. If you look online, everyone's doing dreadlocks a different way. So whatever works for you and make it look good and to be functional in the game that you're working for, and just adapt to whatever you need to do. It doesn't mean that this is the way or another way is the best way. Just it's like getting a food recipe. You follow it the first time and then you mess it up and try something else.
Oh yeah, that's the best time. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. Okay, we have time for one more question, and then we'll let Andreea go. She's been very generous every time so far.
It was fun.
Maria. Hey, Andreea, what thickness value do you recommend to use in X-Gen for cards?
I would say it depends on the project, because some project might want them really, really thin and they control the thickness in engine. And on some projects, they might want them like really, really chunky so that they can be readable from a distance, or it depends on the project. In this case, I think I have them on 0.05. I think so, or 0.03. Something like that. But it depends on how your textures are aligned on the sheet and how many textures you have so that you can occupy the space, and how you're using them on the card. Because in this case, like the hair strands are a tiny bit thicker than hair would be in reality. So I'm always thinking of hair in like my hair, for example. I go look in the mirror or I find some photos online. I'm just looking at that, and I make them a bit thicker than that so that the alpha doesn't suffer in engine. That's my thinking. I don't think there's a necessary rule for it, at least not from what I've found. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I don't think that Mary has a microphone, so she won't be able to answer it.
Oh, right.
This is, like, to those who wonder why I have a Dutch angle to my camera now, it's my gimbal that completely died. I think my gimbal is like, I think it's time to call it, Laura. It's like, okay. Let me see if I can set that straight at least for a thank you. Yeah, I have all this fancy equipment I've bought for myself that is completely useless, but kind of fun to use. I like gadgets.
It's really nice when it's working. It's putting my camera to shame.
Well, the camera still works, just the gimbal is it. Let me see if I can because I want to thank you properly. I think we may have one more question to go through, actually, but it should be a quick one. Can I lower this again? This will have to do. Oh yeah, that should be fine. Okay, that's kind of it. Was there? I think there was one more quick question here. Was there? No, that's it. Steveson, you will just have to real-time group strands instead of cards. Yeah, we've talked about that. Skinning-wise, lucky you've asked. Well, that's it, everyone. It was a long one, but again, I want to thank Andreea for being so generous of her time. It was great. Oh, let me switch this over first of all.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah, so thank you, Andreea, for your time. It was great. It was great to have you here. We went for quite a long time there, but I think it was really worth it. I think that this will definitely be one of the highlights that we have on the website there. I think you have contributed so much interesting knowledge there that yeah, like I was kind of listening to this and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that she's like giving away so much knowledge there and stuff. And yeah, I want to thank you again. It was a great talk. So
my pleasure. It's not what I don't know. I'm just trying to make it clear for other people as well. There's no magic. Just have to try it out. It's not black magic. Just whatever it is, just go there and do it.
Yeah. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up. This is the first class of Outgang Season 2, but we'll be back next week, of course. Next week, we have a class that will be an overview of how to create a low-res. So we've talked quite liberally about low-res in the context of hair in this particular case. Next week, it is a class dedicated to low-res creation for just the rest of a character, really. Like what goes into a proper low-res for a character. We'll break down that question in every way that is possible to do so. We won't talk necessarily about tools. We'll talk about the tools that you can use to create that, of course, but it won't be a practical class. It'll be a theoretical class where I really want, after that class is done, that you all have all your questions answered as to, okay, what goes into a proper low-res? How do we create that? And how can I differentiate myself, whether I have created a proper low-res or not there when you are working in 3D? And then the week after that, then will be the practical one where we will look at all the tools involved in retopology and what have you there. Next week's class will be live. The class after that will not be live, but I will keep you updated on a weekly basis as to whether to expect a live class or not, because I don't want you all showing up here to not have anyone giving you a class in Sunday there. So we'll all keep in touch as far as that's concerned. I want to thank you all again. I want to thank Andreea again for her for the time that she has given us and for sharing as much as she has. I'll let you all say goodbye there, and then we will end the stream.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreea. Thanks for answering my questions, and have a good day. Have a good night.
And you as well. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
All right. See you all.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Andreea. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.